go to D, that shows from 2016, I had, as you can see on the benefits and that how high they are and employee wages, because I had 4 full-time employees myself, 2 deputy reporters, and 1 cadastral mapper number 2. And if you turn the page after, it's going to go each year. And you can see the actual budget for 2017 and the wages and stuff, that those are more than what it showed in 2019, and we've had raises in that over the years. And 2019 it carries, 2018, excuse me, there's a difference, but if you look at number E, it showed that was only for the full-time employees. The part-time wasn't added, and so they did an amended in 2018 a budget amendment to add those hours into my budget. And then number F is when we went in 2017, instead of 4 full-time reporters, 4 full-time people in the recorder's office, we went to 3 full-time to 1 and 1 part-time. 1 part-time, there was a new job description that was made that was an enhancement, a deputy recorder plus an office assistants to help learn more functions in the office and to be able to help in the areas that was needed. And so F, shows the reporter. And it was posted in the paper and whatnot on the 1st of, on page 2, the 1st of January. And then if you turn to page 3, it shows what this position that was advertised based on what the council had agreed to. That back in 2017, that HR was also the council secretary. She's the one that generated this advertisement. It had a beginning and ending salary. It wasn't a starting, and that's it. There was you could go up to that much. And if you notice, it's the hours is 29 hours, which equals 1,508 hours. I just think there was a discrepancy, a mistake made, and so it's just carried on. So what I'm doing is requesting, based on the information, is what to increase my budget to what it should have been to be consistent had there not been any discrepancy. Instead of 1 part-time people, I'm sharing 2 part-time people. Their positions and wages are justified on their duties, positions, and their experience. Both positions share the hours, and if needed, I will adjust their hours to make sure I stay within the budget.
So Brenda, just a quick question on, even if it has a salary range, it still has to be budgeted at 1. I mean, if the salary range is $14 to $17 an hour, it still has to be budgeted either 14 or 17 an hour. It can't be within that range. But it looks to me like even with the discrepancy, if there were a discrepancy with the hours, it was still budgeted at $14.33, but it looks like this employee was hired at $17.29. So that still tells me that the amount wasn't properly budgeted?
Yeah, okay, so again, that 1433 should have been 1490 and an increase. He got hired in right before budget, but for some reason it didn't get put in, it didn't move over to the clerk's office to post that in the budget, and therefore it wasn't discussed, and it carried, and we had already hired him in, and it wasn't discussed. And we used that based on that salary range, but also his professionalism, and it wasn't discussed. So what would have to happen is I'd have to ask for a change of that, or I'd have to say, okay, your hours were cut because this is all the money we have to work with.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree that he's worth that much money. I just mean it wasn't
right.
properly
like I said,
approved
it
at
was
all.
right at the cusp of the budget, and I didn't realize until after I'm getting all this paperwork how it all came about.
So right now, he's at 1729, is that correct?
No, because we couldn't hire him as a contract employee because the fact is he helps come in and work. He's now doing a different job function, which is not an office assistant deputy recorder. He is mapping all these, helping me map all these subdivisions that we're so bombarded with. And so his hourly rate would be, is $19 an hour based on that.
19 even.
19 even, and like, if he would have been if I would have budgeted him as a contract employee, he would have been paid more than that salary.
So he's at 19 even, and what are the hours? Are you saying it's supposed to be 1508 for the hours?
No, that's supposed to be shared between the two and not go over budget between the two employees.
So
So
we've
that-
got him at 19, and we've got another at what wage?
16.
16 even.
So the biggest discrepancy is between the 1040 hours in column 4 on Exhibit A and 1508 hours. And so what she's indicated is that in each of the prior years, that part-time position has been budgeted at 1,508 hours. So that's the biggest decrease in the budget amount. And what I think you're asking for is if we took the 1,490 plus the 2.3% increase
Right.
and multiplied it between the difference between 1040 and 1509, that would be the budget increase. And the fact, and to the extent that the hourly rate would cause her to exceed that dollar amount, she would reduce the hours to stay within the budget.
Reduce the hours from 1508 to whatever.
Yeah, to get through this budget. Yeah, I'm not, had I known that didn't make it over there, I would have, at budget time last year, talked about that increase of my employee for what he was paid. And
I
that's
guess-
because it didn't make it in there, now we're in a
Well,
different situation.
even if it had made it in there, my concern would be, because it wasn't approved prior, the increase in the hourly wage.
Mhm.
I mean, if you had hired someone before that, what if it got to the budget hearing and the increase wasn't approved? I mean, so I still think it wouldn't have been a good that's not necessarily your fault or anything, but since its process is still bad.
And I don't disagree with that. I think
That's kind of
we've got
irrelevant.
two different issues. We've
Yeah.
got a process for hiring and what the hourly rate is and what approval process that's supposed to go through HR and whether or not it's supposed to be council approved. That's one issue. And then the second is the discrepancy in the budget between the hours allocated for a part-time position, which she's dividing between two, which it looks historically like it's been the 1508, 1508, 1508, and then this last year it got bumped down to 1040, and I don't think I don't recall that being intentional by the council.
I don't recall having a conversation about it either.
I think it was just a mistake.
So it's the 1490 plus the 2.3, what would be the budget difference if we were to calculate it with the increase at the 1508,
I show 6289.
6,289? Does that include the benefit side of
No,
it?
that's just the wage side.
And I don't know what
Are you
happens to
doing
benefits on
1490 or
part-time
times
employees.
it by- Are you doing it, so that would equal 1532?
So 1490 times the 1508 is 21,609.
But you didn't do the 2.8 increase that they showed.
2.8 on top of the
1432.
1490?
Yeah.
So, yeah, because the
So if you look-
1490 was the rate that the employee had been approved at, and then we gave the raises as part of the budget process across the board.
2.8%, so it's 1531.
I thought, I calculated it 170.
Well, 32. Yeah, if you round it, 1532.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Anyway.
So 1532 times 1508 equals 23,102.56. Minus 15,320. The difference is 77,8207.
Say that again, Mike.
7,782. That's just salary, and then looks like benefits. I don't know how we calculate that, Sarah. How do we do the benefit?
7.25 if I remember right.
Depends on-
So is that based off the 1729 or the 19?
It's based off of,
Well, I guess we could
15.31.
calculate it.
Yeah, it's for this employee.
1532,
I've-
$15.32, yeah. Okay, well, if we take the current, the 1172 divided by 1530. Yeah, 0.765, okay. I show an additional 595.34
what was
in
that? Just one second.
benefits.
What was it?
$595.34 in additional benefits.
Okay. So.
No, but see that, that was the rate. You got the 4%,
It was right
which
here.
takes it to the 1490.
So the part-time employee received a raise to the 1490
The
in
four-
January. That's this increase right here.
That's this increase to
And then
15 to
as part of the
1490.
budget last year, we raised the employees by the
retirement's over 20
2.3%.
hours.
So that's where you get to.
So
the
we're adding another
So do we have to go
2.3%
with
onto
this?
this.
to that.
Is that onto this number? All right, that's where I was lost, okay.
So what's the total, Mike? 8,000?
8,377.41.
Okay, any further questions for Brenda?
Okay, so we're saying that the employee should be at 1524?
1532.
32. Maybe it was 2.4. What was the raise, 2.3 or 2.4?
2.8.
2.8.
Oh, all right. 'Cause I went 2.4, okay. So 15, what'd you say, Mike?
32. $15.32. If we multiply that by 1508 as the number of hours, you get 23,102.56. If you subtract what was budgeted, which was 15,320.49, you get 7,782.07. And then I just calculated additional benefits by dividing what we already had budgeted into that 15,000. It's like 7.6%. And multiply that same percentage by the difference, that's $7,782, which gives another $595.34 in benefits, for a grand total of $8,377.41. Does that track with what you're
That's
finding?
based off, yeah, well, yeah, that's based off the 1532.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. That's correct.
So Brenda's looking for a budget increase of 8,377.41, and we'll adjust the hours of her part-time employees to say within that number. And with respect to determination of hourly rates and hires, we need to follow up on what that process is and get it clarified to the extent it requires further clarification.
Okay, because that's part two of the question, correct?
It's part
Well,
two
I
of
mean,
the
she's-
problem.
Yeah, the
Huh?
issue.
It's part two of the problem.
Well, that's what I'm
Should have
saying.
never been done in the first place, but yes,
Okay, well, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure.
you're
So,
right.
so we're talking the 8,300 is the difference in these wages, the 14, what was it? The 1,040 and the 1,508.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is
The
the
budget
difference
hours.
here.
Yep.
Okay, but then the part two of our deal is why we now have an employee at 19 bucks.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, we'll make sure we're on the same page. So where are we going?
What we would need, if the council is inclined to approve the budget increase, is just a motion to increase the budget for the recorder's office by $8,377.41. And then, once we do that, then we'll do that through a budget amendment process.
This is just a work session.
Right, this is a work session, but if we're willing to give that increase, then we'll get it scheduled and notice it up as a budget amendment.
So are we just taking a straw poll here, or what are we doing?
Yeah. I understand the discrepancy, and I think she's demonstrated that the 1508 was what had been budgeted for a number of years. And if the intent was not to modify that budget, then this increase seems consistent with what we were doing as part of the budget process last time. It's just an error.
Yeah, I concur.
Yeah, if there's a discrepancy in those hours, and it should have been that way. Should go back up.
Any different feelings?
No, I'm okay.
Okay. So we'll, Stacy, does Brenda need to get you something to get that budget amendment process in the works, or is that something you can take care of and just get on the agenda? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay, so question, how are we addressing part two of our,
We'll have to do that
Well-
during the budget cycle to see if we want to approve more money for the position. If not, have to go back to 1433 and just gotta figure that out.
They either have to
Either
reduce
way.
hours or wages.
Right, and there can be follow-up on the human resources side as well.
Sure.
That's a different issue from my
Sure.
perspective, so.
well, I'm just looking at if we're doing, unless I'm missing something, if she's paying 19 bucks an hour, and we're saying it should be 1532, she's not gonna make it to the end of the year with the budget.
She's
gonna
gonna
have to
cut
reduce
the
the
hours
hours.
back. She's gonna cut the
Okay.
hours back to
Yeah,
stay within
so
the
she
budget
won't really get
increase.
29 hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay, our next agenda item is Member Cannon. I think she's joined on the phone. Are you on the phone now?
Yep, I'm on.
Okay. This is continued from our August 18th meeting. It's a review of business grant applications for COVID relief.
It's Mike, I don't see in my email where Carol sent these out. Did they go out before?
So everybody has a
The
paper,
council?
Tina, everybody has a paper copy here of the score sheets for these businesses. And I don't know the best way to go through these. We've got a number of them here.
So help me for just a minute, just to kind of get through these maybe a little more efficiently. So there's the scoring matrix on the front, and where is the recommendation contained in these documents?
So every business that's there is the parameters that we set as a council for receiving a grant. And then, but their scores up to 30, I think the highest score we had was 25. So as you go through them, they've been scored based on that criteria, how much they were impacted and how much they were not. So when the council discussed this, we didn't really just, we didn't put any emphasis on the scoring. It's kind of that, this is how much they were impacted based on the documents that they gave us. in the scoring. So each one of them should have been scored by 5 different people, and that's what you're seeing in the packet. And then you also have the documents that they sent to verify numbers.
So are
So
your
we
scores
have a
average?
year-to-year comparison and proof of unemployment filing to prove number of employees.
So you have scores that range from 14 to 25 depending upon the applicant, if I'm reading these right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone's under 14, because I haven't seen them since the CED board scored them.
So Tina, what we were provided by Carol was just the score sheets and not all the backup information. I have hard copies of the backup information, but I only have one here that she left me.
So,
Which
sorry,
might
Mike,
make it
I
a,
couldn't hear that. You
sorry.
said again?
So Carol provided us with copies of the score sheets for each of these, but not with the backup information. I do have copies of the, hard copies of the backup information here, but I only have one copy of that. And I'm trying to decide the best way for us to really look at this because,
Or do you have the redacted one?
looks like they are. Yeah, it looks
So
like,
there's a copier over there on the side, Mike. You can probably,
I don't know,
everyone,
we can try to copy this. There is a lot of information here. I mean, this
Yeah.
stack
Well,
is
and
several
yeah,
hundred
and you get
pages.
5 for each one, plus their backup documents. You're probably looking at 15,
So how come we have,
so
at least 50 pages.
actually, these range from 14 to 28. So, I mean, we've had this reviewed by a committee.
This includes 33.
I come up with 33 possible, not 30.
I came up with 33 too.
Tina, did you hear that?
We're not using Common Core either.
Looks like the points available is actually 33, not 30.
I use touch points.
Actually, sorry, I'm trying to decide which the best way to hear you guys is. But the total, I don't have the score sheet in front of me, but there's one of them that's an either or. They were either forced to close, which was the 5 points, or they chose to implement social distancing, but it's not both. It's one or the other. So the total could be
Oh,
30
3 and
at the
4
highest.
are
Couldn't count
ors.
both of those items.
I don't think the folks who did the scoring understood that it was one or the other because we have scores in both columns.
which one is that one, Mike?
That's 3 and 4. Number 3 and 4.
Okay.
So there's a couple of things that I think we need to consider here, and maybe we need to have all this backup information for the council. And we can try to copy this. Number one, I think we need to consider what our criteria is going to be. We have, one of the questions here is, businesses that applied but did not receive funding from the Small Business Administration or GoEd or, loan programs. And the question is, if they did receive funding from those programs, are we still comfortable providing additional funding, grant funding? And how do we want to look at that?
We did actually discuss that 2 weeks ago or a month ago. Roland, do you remember we talked about that at length? Because I remember you and I talking about that, because that was my concern at that point in time. And the council direction at that point was it wouldn't eliminate their ability.
Okay.
Oh, yes, I do.
Okay, I'm fine with that. And maybe I missed, that was probably the meeting I wasn't at.
I
But
do.
it
So-
affected the score.
It does affect their score. Those who did receive other funding have a 0 or should have a 0 in that number 2 item. And then I guess the other question is, determined by need. There were a couple of businesses that appeared to even though revenue was down, expenditures were down, and net revenue was up year over year from the same quarter. So that's something to consider and think about, whether we consider that business eligible or not.
And that's where it gets difficult for me at this point in time, and why I wanted the parameters there before we started evaluating them and sending them out, because I think I talked to you about this, Mike. It's hard for me to put this on the record, but going into it, it's really difficult for me on a grant like this, knowing where the money's coming from, and I have mixed feelings on some of these. It's been a very difficult process for me because need is not the same.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's very hard to, in a situation where it's a forced government action, how do you determine degree of impact on a business? Is it any impact? And our grant is a lot smaller than what was available through other.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways we could look at this.
Other things. It's been difficult for me. I'll be glad to listen over.
So is there a recommendation from the committee as to amounts for each of these applicants?
So there were amounts determined based on the business type, and they're listed on the bottom of the scoring sheet. So a sole proprietor was eligible for up to $5,000. If you had 1 to 9 employees, up to $7,000, and 10 to 49 employees, up to $10,000. So that's their eligibility based on the criteria we set. We have all the backup information here. I feel more comfortable if the council has that information and can look at it, but I want you guys to tell us if that's what you want. I think there's a couple of ways we can go about this. Looking at the time right now, by the time I get these copied, we're going to be well into our next meeting, into our council meeting. And I don't think that gives adequate time for the council to review the backup information. So I understand the urgency to try to get some funding to some of these businesses. Tina, what are your thoughts here? Do we want to send this information to the council? We have it electronically we can send to you, or we can make copies and give you paper hard copies of it and give you a chance to review and then come back to the next meeting with it. Do we want to try to get this to you now and at least go through a couple of these businesses in this meeting?
I worry about the 3-week break we have between this meeting and the next. And there are a couple who have been more impacted than others who are anxious. So I don't know if the council can make a motion to approve these to go on the checklist after 4 positive votes for one, or for a majority vote on each business number, or it's that 3-week break between this meeting and the next that I worry about. And it's already been a very long process to get this done.
This one this one is not locally owned.
So, question, is this something that we can review and approve in just an administrative session? Or do we need to approve it in a council meeting? And the reason I'm asking is, do we want to hold a separate administrative session to just focus on this?
So I think I asked
Jen,
him
what's
about
your
this. I
thoughts?
can't see down on the video, and I'll be there, but I think I asked him about that this was, and I think the response was that this could be an administrative item that we handle in an administrative
Okay. that's,
We will have to unmask the names once these businesses go to the stage where a check is actually issued. So at that point, but we were trying to keep a lot of these.
yeah, the intent of trying to not have business names on here was so that it wasn't well, you gave this business something because you liked them, or you know what I mean? Just try to keep us all clean of that, which I think is good. So here's my thought. We have this information electronically, or if you want a paper copy, I'll make paper copies this evening and we can hand those out to you. But what if we schedule a separate administrative session to just focus on this? And, you know, can that be done maybe next Tuesday or something like that?
It's fine with me.
I'm out for 10 days. but
You're out for 10 days?
Starting Friday.
I'm available next Tuesday.
Starting Friday.
Or Tuesday, the 29th? Well, you're probably not back by then either, are you?
I'm planning on being back the 27th.
Okay.
unless things don't go my way,
board
and I might
equalization hearings
stay longer.
Oh,
all day in here, I mean, depending on what time you plan on having.
okay.
Those are the days we've scheduled for board equalization hearings.
So 22nd, Robert can't
I'm
then.
available for the
Are
22nd.
you available, Roland? What's your, Sarah, did you say?
I don't,
I
22nd
can
of
make
what?
myself.
This month.
22nd of January.
Oh, next
We're in a
Tuesday?
hurry, right?
Okay, next Tuesday,
Yes,
okay,
next
yeah.
Tuesday.
Okay, sorry.
Is that, Tina, are you okay with that?
I'm sorry, I can't tell what was decided. It was.
They're proposing an administrative meeting a week from tonight, 5:30, to go over the applications and make a determination amount. I would like two things. I would like to get the information in advance, the background information, and I would actually appreciate a recommendation, if it's possible, from the committee as to the amount.
Okay.
If you don't, I mean, that seems to make sense to me. They looked through these things in detail. It would make sense that they gave the recommendation as to the amount based upon that scale that you talked about, proprietor, number of employees, and so
I
forth.
agree, at least a rating of
Tina
some
did
sort,
put
like an average.
one on here. When I just got.
Okay, so, and if I'm the only one that it bothered, that's okay. Well, I'm just going through all of these deals, and we have multiple names throughout the scoring sheets. My question is, why isn't the same group scoring all of these applications?
So it was sent out, go ahead, Tina, if you want to answer.
Then it would be equal.
That's what, either one of us, Mike. So it was sent out to the CED board. So someone on the CED board had to score it. But based on who the business was, there are only 3 of us who knew what the actual business name was. So based on that knowledge, there were some members of the CED board who could not review some applications.
In other words, they owned businesses that,
So we were trying to keep them as independent as possible from the information.
potentially.
So there would be no bias, and that's why you're seeing different names. And since there were 24 businesses originally, so we were trying not to put that kind of burden on some of our volunteers and going through that many businesses. So we were trying to create an efficient way to do it, but also one that wasn't as time-consuming as it's been. for these.
Well, but my only concern with it, and that's why I ask, is because you're gonna look at an application and rate it, a 4. I might look at a different application and rate it a 3, and you might have rated it at a 4. And so I'm just trying to look at having it be consistent as far as the rating numbers go.
That's a good point.
I think the other question that we need to determine an answer to is, what do these ratings mean? You know, do we say, well, if they score over a certain amount, they get the full grant amount that they were eligible for? Do we prorate it back based on their score? Because ultimately, I mean, we've got these scores, but what does that really mean in terms of these grant amounts?
So the people that did these ratings, they didn't know the businesses either?
Correct, they did not know the businesses.
So why couldn't the council go through the same thing that they did and rate them
You could do the exact same
without
thing
knowing
if you
the
want.
business name?
And you won't with this information anyway, because it's been redacted, but, so yeah, you
Because then it would
can
be,
if you want.
to me, it would just be more an equal.
So,
But ultimately, I think we need to decide,
what is-
what does this scoring
so what
actually
is-
mean, right?
one of the problems that we have with it, with the scoring, is if we go back to the conversation that the council had for direction, the criteria that we gave for the level was based on the number of employees. So we did the 5, 7, and 10 based on the number of employees. And then we set up the criteria that's on the sheet that's where it became difficult for me in the scoring, because it doesn't, what we said is the criteria, they all meet that, or you wouldn't be seeing their applications. It's how much of an impact they had that's reflected in the scoring. So in the evaluation, it wasn't, do they get the grant or not? The evaluation is how much of an impact we thought they had. But in the direction from the council, from my interpretation, it wasn't a yes or no, they got it. It was how much were they impacted.
Yeah, but I think the next question is, you know, if we determine that they were impacted, how do we determine what portion of that eligible amount they receive? You know, is it, well, if they were impacted, they receive all of it. If they were only impacted partially, they receive part of it. I think that's the question we need to answer.
Well, that's why I asked the question when we were doing the scoring sheet going into it, and why it was so hard to set up. Because it's always in a grant situation you run into this, and always in every business is different, and their impact is different. And at some point in this type of a situation, there's an amount of trust that you have to give to a business in the honesty of their answers and in what they're requesting. This is why from the beginning I said I really struggle with these situations, because
So,
we are not always our better selves. This is difficult. But if you go based on the answers that they gave for impact in the essay question, then the amount that the council determined was based on the number of employees, which we could determine on the unemployment filing report from the state of Utah.
so this will inevitably involve a discretionary judgment on the part of the council. Again, I would appreciate receiving the information electronically. Let's meet next Tuesday at 5:30. I would also appreciate a recommendation from the CEDB board as to an amount, or if you think that's too difficult to get from them, then we can just figure it out. We're not, we've received funding, right, to do this?
What do you want their criteria to be? Because that's what we try to do in the 5, 7, and 10. So if you want a recommendation beyond the number of employees, which is what the criteria was, then is that a number? Is that a number, the amount of impact based on the size of the business. Because the criteria we gave was you had to prove you had $10,000 of revenue. They all met that.
Well, then let's do this, Tina. Then why don't we just think about what you're going to establish as a percentage based on the score? And if they qualify for the $10,000 amount, if they score between, whatever, 25 and 30, then they receive 100% of the amount. If they go from, 20 to 25, it's 80% or something like that, if that's easier. I mean, to simplify it. I frankly, we've received the funding to do this. It's intended to go to businesses that have been affected by this. And if I'm willing to trust that the applicants were honest in their application and that the board did a good job in terms of their evaluation individually and in good faith, I would go the 5, 7, and 10. It doesn't matter that much in terms of the overall amount. I can't imagine that most small businesses haven't had at least that amount of impact as a result of COVID, and this is funding that we've received for this purpose. I frankly don't want to overthink it, and so let's plan on Tuesday, and then if let's not get the recommendation from the CED board, but be thinking about if there's a percentage breakdown of the total amount, or we just want to do the total. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's,
That makes sense.
That
That I
sounds
can
good.
do based on the percentage and the scores. I can do
What's
that.
Okay, so that means that item 1 will come off of our agenda tonight, correct?
What's the total amount that we have for this? Randy was asking. So I'll ask.
we still have about, I want to say $800,000 in COVID relief funds that's unallocated.
Okay.
So,
This would be from the COVID relief funds.
Yes.
so we had allocated 180,000 overall, but that was based on everyone getting to 10,000, and most businesses will not get that 10,000. So we are.
And that was
some,
based on having
that
18
are 24
businesses
who
though,
started
right?
The process, there are not 24 who have finished the process based on the documentation we requested. So we are way under that amount.
So-
I would
Yeah,
say
we
half.
had allocated 180
So our max
initially,
was 10.
but we still have, unallocated
Okay.
a good portion of the COVID funds. So
So these
it's
are
not
the
that it
only
has to
businesses
meet
that
that.
Have turned it in and qualify?
These are the businesses that have turned it in, have been scored, and qualify. There may be some more that will come that may
Yeah.
still be
So
turning.
90.
There are still several businesses, because I went
If
back
they
and
get it.
requested
If we get all
verification
10.
of the numbers that they had reported,
Okay,
that some of them are taking longer to turn those documents in on the verification.
okay, so I think the final resolution of this matter is to meet next Tuesday at 5:30. All who are available, you can participate by phone, Robert, if you're,
I don't have no cell service. I'm
you
so stinking
you are a
excited.
fortunate man.
You poor guy.
Okay.
I'm gonna be
Uh,
10 days without any.
So we'll do that. That will result in item 1 from our agenda being removed tonight. I'm going to move item 8 into that slot because I know Tina's participating from Washington DC, and we'll go ahead and move her item up. Let's move to our last item on the work session, the follow-up damage reports and tender of insurance claims for the wind event of September 8th, 2020.
Okay, so there, I put the list on your desk there. What we had to do is the best we could, trying to get these estimates, just because time frames, everybody's busy doing bids, everybody was already busy because the construction industry is going nuts. So some of this we had to kind of work up based on our own expertise, between Brett and I and the rest, he was able to get some bids. The big ones, obviously, the county salt shed. One thing about that is if any work has to be done on that wood, you can't do it until that salt's out of there, because you can't have nails falling into that salt, you can't have chunks of wood falling into that salt, and then go spread that out on the highway and run it through your machines. So that we're either going to have to haul all the salt off, and nobody has time to do that, and then come in and do whatever we decide to do there, or we just try and tack some tin back up on there and get by and do the major repairs after the winter or after we've used up the salt. So we kind of got to decide that. Fairgrounds roof repairs. The livestock building, now remember, the trees are still sticking through these roofs. We don't know the true extent of the damage until we can get the trees out there and have an engineer inspect. For example, on the concession building, as far as we know, it's crushed the trusses inside. These are stick-built roofs that were built a long time ago. We know that it's done some damage, we just don't know to what extent. So we don't know for sure what we're going to get in there until we get an adjuster and or an engineer in there that's actually looking structurally for this damage. So these are basically rough estimates on what it would take to fix the roofing material only if.
Okay.
30,000 replace the roof, 78,000 for a new building, and 98,000 for what?
It's
The new building
so,
is 98,
so that's why I
right?
was confused on some of those others because of that one right there. The 30,000 I think is just to replace the tin that's there. 78 would be a whole new roof.
Okay.
To put a whole new building up would be
Okay.
98.
I was looking-
Austin, do you have a comment?
In talking to Brett about this, the 30,000 just to put tin on the roof to make it true.
Right, the tin that blew off.
No guarantees with it
Right.
whatsoever. The 78,000 would be more of a limited guarantee, and they would fix the roof and limited guarantee to it, but it'd take a lot more work than the last one's just a brand new building.
It's a shame we can't use COVID funds
That's
on
right.
this. Just-
Making sure that was
Hey, Boyd said
possible,
every
right?
call's a COVID call.
I feel like
I've
it
heard
was
that
part
in
of
hospitals
It
COVID.
is,
too.
yeah.
That's a COVID death.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's that. Then you've got the fairgrounds, the 3 buildings at the fairgrounds. Recreation complex, I have the school district looking into that with their insurance, so we're gonna just kind of leave that in limbo for right now. We won't put that on ours. Fairgrounds fences, estimate about 4,200. The exhibit door that got smashed and everything, 3,600 to replace that. The 48,500 tree removal, that's basically us doing the work and renting the equipment in order to do the work. That's not bringing in a tree service.
And it also adds in Dan Wilkerson and his tree grinder.
It's chipper.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean by renting and bringing in that. We're not bringing in like nice tree service to
Correct.
do this. That's us doing a lot of the work. So we got to, and if we're turning this to insurance, I don't know that our guys have the time. We're talking 2 to 3 weeks of work
So
for
the
taking our
fairgrounds,
guys off job and putting them on just tree removal.
the fairgrounds board was planning a cleanup
Cleanup
day this Saturday.
This Saturday, to
Um,
start removing trees, yes.
Okay.
This Saturday and next Saturday.
Not next, but the one after that.
Oh, did they skip it?
Mhm.
Oh, I didn't get that memo.
Yeah, the 26th or something. Anyway,
Oh,
I think that's
29th.
that is the next
the
one.
next
Is that the next two?
Yeah.
So-
For some
so
reason, I
these
thought
are-
it skipped, but maybe I'm
18th
wrong.
or 19th and 26th is what I had. That should be the next 2 Saturdays.
You're right. You're
Okay.
right.
So these are numbers you're turning into the insurance? Is that
These
what
are numbers we're turning into the insurance to determine whether we need an adjuster to come out and deal with the
So
process.
what I need to have done is I need Brett to follow through and get me photographs. And if we've determined that this is over a $100,000 event, they will send an adjuster up. So that's what we need to have happen.
Okay, so
We need to
It's
finish.
definitely over
We have
100,000.
the pictures.
I can work with Brett. We've got
And,
a lot of pictures.
yeah, we have the pictures, and these estimates that we were able to get was to tell us that, yes, we have exceeded that. The TV tower alone, that is a very good estimate for the TV tower equipment and antennas. That has nothing to do with all the power poles that got knocked down leading up to the TV tower, because the city's got to get us quotes on that.
And one thing about that is the power poles, who do the power poles belong to?
That's what we're waiting to find out from the city. But that's not included in here.
So we had an appraisal done in May, so I have all of the buildings marked that came through with this piece of paper. So I'm ready, I'm just waiting for Brett to follow through. One of the things that was not appraised while they were here during the appraisal was the TV tower. we didn't take them up to do the TV tower, so it's not part of our package. And then I did list, and you have acknowledged that the Reflex is
Right.
not part of our property. So from here on out, if that's part of our, it's going to be part of our assets, that'll be something that we're gonna wanna move on and move over.
Okay. So as far as it being in excess of $100,000, the TV tower alone is in excess of $100,000.
So if you can just get him to finish following through with that and get me pictures, we will get an adjuster up here and
So-
we'll-
So what form do you want those pictures in? Because we sent them to you through that text thing,
yeah,
but
well,
maybe you can't get them off of that, I don't know.
I got the text that you sent me of,
The TV towers, and then you've got the shed, the salt shed.
I have my own personal picture of the salt lake, yeah.
Okay. Because I've got every one of these pictures I can send you if you
Yeah.
want me to just send them
So
to
if we
you.
can get a collaborative effort to get this stuff, we'll file it as an event with this particular damage, they'll send us up an adjuster.
Okay.
And we can use it and file it as an insurance claim and
Okay.
see what we can get covered.
Tomorrow you will have all these pictures. Outside of those pictures, what else do you need? Is this good enough?
If this is what you want to have, like,
This is what we want to have. And again, these are very rough estimates, so we're expecting through the adjuster and through that process, we find out what the true costs are going to be. And okay, tomorrow you will have pictures in a format that you can email.
wait,
Okay.
Okay, thanks for putting that together.
Can I just get a clarification?
Sure.
I know for part of this with Dan Wilson and some of the renting the chipper and that, there was a discussion on where we pull the funds from with some of the council members, and they said pull it out of the emergency management budget. We don't, I went to Stacy today about getting a GL number to do that, and she said there's not one.
There's not an existing amount in an emergency management budget, but we could pull from the general fund and make a budget allocation to emergency management.
to the sheriff's.
And as part of the insurance claim, can you see what they prefer in terms of submission of invoices and, you know, and it sounds like we better get a bid on the tree removal service
Right.
that's not
Well,
self-performed.
and that's my next question to Stacy is, can you check with the insurance and find out how much we should be doing before the adjuster gets here?
Yeah, and that was part of the email that I'd sent out earlier, is that this is what they've said. We've got one event, so it's not gonna be per building or anything like that. If it's over $100,000, they wanna send somebody out here, so let's get somebody out here and do
Okay.
that.
If there's a reason for us not to have them show up and start cutting up trees, the volunteers on Saturday, that's what I want to know. If you can get that out
Especially
tomorrow.
if it's the building damage, like you said,
Right.
there's trees still sitting inside the building.
It is.
I'll head over right now, cause it's already happened today.
They've started?
Public Works was over there, spent the entire day over there moving stuff and doing some of the smaller stuff, yeah.
Okay.
And I have that concern that, you know, if we're expending time with Brett and his guys, having them removing things, and if it's going to affect our ability to file a claim, stop having them remove
Right.
things and start working on filing a claim.
Yeah, I didn't, he did not indicate, we had talked and he was going to hold off on the fairgrounds until after we had an answer, so I didn't know they went over today.
Everything's
We had
been
decided not
photographed
to do
and
that.
documented that way, but I will go over and
So Stacy, we're over $100,000. She'll get the pictures tomorrow, tender the claim, get an adjuster out here, and
Got it.
what about all the ones in the river?
if you've documented it, I think you'll probably be fine
The
on a
what?
casualty
All the
claim,
trees in the
but it's
river?
All the
better to
trees
get
in
it
the
done.
river.
Beavers.
Yeah, I was gonna say Army Corps of Engineers, that's
Bring
their
her off, we'll
baby.
take
We're not
care of
allowed to
We
touch
could,
it.
we could pull out the flood account and start working on that.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to, before we start expending a lot of resources, I want to make sure. The recreation complex was a little different because it was in the process of being used and we needed to get it opened back up. But these other places, we're not using them right now.
Well, and the thing with the Recplex is, if I understood the damage of the Recplex, there wasn't a building that was damaged.
No,
and so
fences.
there wasn't an insurance claim that you could file on anything because it was a fence or it was a tree down and.
Yeah. So, and like I said, the school district's looking into that anyway, so.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna go stop them, because I think they're still up there working.
Are they really? Yeah,
Yeah,
stop them.
Really? Okay, thanks.
All right. We're about 8 minutes late to begin. Does anybody need a break, or can we just move into our regular session? Okay. All right, we'll call to order the regular session for the Morgan County Council Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. All members of the council are present, with Member Cannon participating by telephone. I didn't ask anyone in advance. Member Kilmer, would you mind doing the prayer?
Our dear kind Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this opportunity we have to come together as a community and discuss the issues that face the citizens of Morgan County. Father, we thank Thee for this beautiful county and everything that Thou hast given us to live with here, all the resources and the people that have been here and that have moved here, and the great benefits that they bring to the community. Father, we ask Thee to be with us tonight, that as we discuss these issues, that we can do so in a spirit of camaraderie and community, and keep each other's feelings in mind, so that we do this professionally and there are no attacks on people. And we say these things humbly in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Member Kilmer. So with respect to the agenda, item 1 is going to be deleted, and I want to move item 8 up into that position. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
I'll move to approve the agenda as amended.
Is there a motion and a second to approve the agenda? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we do have minutes to review. The first minutes are for, let's see, our meeting on August 18th. Are there any changes or corrections? I have just on page 6, above the discussion on the Department of Agricultural lease, that should be Member Haslam moved to postpone instead of moved to postponed.
Are you in August 4th or August 18th?
I'm in August 18th.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I bookmarked it at the wrong place. Let me go. I thought I had it. Maybe I skipped too far.
Oh,
That was August 4th, sorry. The agenda at the front page of that
It's
says the
18th.
18th. That's why I thought it, and on the bottom it says August 18th too. So we want to correct that. Because the first set of meetings is August 4th, and on the bottom of the minute page it says August 18th.
I see.
Okay. And then with respect to Member Kilmer's motion, with respect to the Department of Agriculture, that motion's not, it's substantively accurate, it's just not articulated correctly. So I think it would be Member Kilmer moved to approve Mountain Valley Mechanical as the contractor to make the proposed improvements and to amend the lease agreement with the U.S. Department of Agricultural Forest Service for the existing airport building. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Any other changes or clarifications for the August 4th minutes? Is there a motion to approve the August 4th minutes?
Motion to approve the August 4th minutes.
Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from August 4th, 2020 with the changes proposed.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. The next one are September 1.
You know what, I think those actually were August 18th, not August 4th.
Yeah, they were because, that's when I was sworn in,
Yep,
Oh, my goodness.
because I wasn't here for August 4th.
we just got it on the wrong, yeah.
So those meeting minutes at the beginning
So that the
just
agenda
have the
is
wrong
right
date,
minutes.
the agenda.
Yeah. it
Oh, in
just needs to
fact,
be
there's
changed
the
to
approval of
18th.
the August 4th minutes on that, in the minutes.
What I
So
meant
it
was
is in
motion
fact
to
August
approve.
18th.
And I just,
August 18th.
one thing.
Okay, I'm going to have you vote again. Make a new motion for the
Motion to
August
approve
18th minutes.
August 18th minutes with changes.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. Sorry about the confusion.
I'm sorry about
Okay, so now we are on to the minutes for Tuesday, September 1st. Any corrections, clarifications for these minutes? I have just a couple on page 5 again. So above, about 2/3 of the way down, above the decision and discussion with Member Kilmer and Haslam. So there's the motion, and then you go up to the second bullet point above the motion that says amend paragraph developer. The developer is the owner or authorized agent of landowner, not of. And then in the capital improvement list, so I think that just is intended to say some items no longer apply and are missing from the long-term list.
No, there's two different lists.
So
We had
upon
one
review of the
listed.
list, some items no longer apply and is missing the long-term list. Oh, some items no longer apply and the long-term list is not attached.
Correct.
Okay?
it is not attached. Okay.
And then at the very end, Member Newton moved to go out of executive session and back into. Just missing a word. Any further changes or clarifications? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the September 1st minutes as updated.
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve as updated. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that brings us to a declaration of conflicts of interest. Are there any declarations of conflict with respect to this agenda? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into the public comment period. For those of you who are wanting to speak to the council with respect to matters that aren't up for discussion later on our agenda, please do so now. Come on up, state your name.
Okay, well, it's good to be with you tonight. It's good to see all of you. I'm Mandy Webb. I work for Morgan Health Department. And actually, I was just going to invite you guys to, we're going to be doing, we have a youth group called the Governing Youth Council. So we have students from Morgan High School, and then we have students down in Weber County from the different high schools that participate. And normally we do an annual legislative dinner, but due to COVID, we're going to do kind of a smaller scale, event. So it will be down at the Weber Morgan Health Department in the parking lot on October 8th. So I left an invitation for each of you in your box. The theme that the youth have chosen for this year is to stay positive and to stay safe. What they'll have is booths for you to visit, and they're going to talk about the youth issues and how we can address those, and things that we can do to help our communities as far as alcohol, drugs, suicide prevention, all that. So it's really just an event to let our leaders in our community know what's going on and ways that we can support our youth. So anyways, just wanted to invite you to that. They'll have Waffle Love just providing a little bit of the food that you can just take and leave. Masks will be required, and they'll also follow the social distancing guidelines. So if you guys are interested, you can RSVP us at the health department. And so that's what I wanted to let you know. Thanks for all you do. And
What time is that?
I mentioned
5:30.
5:30 to 7 at night.
We'll have to see where we are in our budget discussions. See, that's motivation. You can
Oh, yeah.
finish the budget approval process and go get a waffle.
You know that I would finish.
I
First
don't
on
know
that
Sarah
one.
would be there.
I heard they're delicious, so I actually want to go try them. So, anyway, so you guys are invited, and then we were also gonna invite like our mayor and all of our local leaders. So anyways, thanks for all you do, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Anyone else that wants to speak as part of the public comment period? Okay, let's move to the first item on our agenda, which is Member Cannon, discussion decision, approval of resolution creating the Morgan County Economic Development Board, reaffirming the July 7th vote by the county council.
So the Governor's Office of Economic Development required this one to be a formal resolution. This is the motion that we took on July 7th.
Just gonna resend it to
So
me.
you're seeing the same item in resolution form before you. So this is just that item.
So we've already approved this as part of our July 7th meeting. They just wanted it in the form of a resolution, so there's an attached resolution. We could just take a motion to approve the resolution, and then we can get it signed and sent off to get the board approved.
What's the resolution number on that? Here it is. Do we have a resolution number?
Do you need a number?
Need a number, or?
Do you need a number on it, Tina? It doesn't have a number.
I don't know what the number is, so I didn't assign it, but yes, I think all of our resolutions have a number that you assign. So I know the year 20 is in there, but I don't know what number resolution we're on. What's our first one?
Lance is guessing
Can I
here.
give you a couple little spelling things I caught while we're waiting?
Sure.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. In the fourth whereas, when appointing members of the CED board, I think right after diversity, it would be a semicolon. That would be consistent with the other paragraphs. Before and, so it'd be diversity, semicolon, and. And the bottom of that page where it says number 4, Morgan County Economic Advisory Board is subject to the Utah Open and Public Meetings Act and its members, I think. Right now it says and our members. Expected I would suggest you replace are with its. And then in paragraph 9 on the back of my copy, county council rather than county commission. So those are just the 3 things I caught.
So it'll be a commission here shortly,
Yeah.
but since we're adopting it now, we probably ought to do council.
So, Tina, does Stacy have this in Word?
I think so. Did I send it to you in Word, Stacy?
No.
So did you get those
Okay.
changes?
I got it from, they sent me one from, I can't remember which county it was, so that's by its commission. I just used their form. So I'll send it to you, Stacy.
Okay.
We can make those updates.
Yeah, and there were just a couple of changes.
I can get those.
And if,
redlined
yeah,
to
if Jan,
Stacy.
yeah, if Jan will get those to Stacy, and then if you'll get it printed up, I'll sign it.
Did we get a
Thank you.
number, or we?
CR 2004.
2004. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve Morgan County Resolution Number CR 2004, a resolution creating the Morgan County Economic Development Board with the changes noted in today's discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion by Member Newton, seconded by Member Swan to approve the resolution CR 2004. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Member Cannon, I didn't hear your vote. Were you in favor?
Yes, I'm in favor.
Okay. 5 members in favor and 2 opposed. Okay. All right. That brings us to our next item. So, Member Cannon, are you going to leave us?
No, I'm going to stay on
Okay.
for as long as my battery holds out.
Okay, great. Item number 2, Haley Hale, discussion, public hearing decision, continuation of a public hearing from the Planning Commission on August 27th, 2020. A proposed amendment to MCC 8-5-4, establishment of zoning districts, 8-5C-3 use regulations, amending the commercial zone districts and commercial use table.
He deserves a raise.
Haley, go ahead.
Okay. So staff, along with the planning commission, are recommending an amendment to the Morgan County Commercial and Industrial Districts Code, and it is Title 8, Chapter 5, Article C in the Morgan County Code. And the proposed amendment is to update the commercial zoning ordinance, which was last updated in 2017. And staff is aware that the planning commission spent many hours deciding on what uses to allow in each commercial zone. Therefore, we have only made changes in which we feel will better represent what the county would like to see in each commercial district. So staff has received and incorporated input from 2 work sessions with the planning commission, along with the recommendation of approval from the planning commission. And the proposed amendment removes the commercial buffer district, the general commercial district, and the business park district due to the redundancy with the neighborhood commercial and commercial shopping district. And so we decided in these 2 work meetings that the Mountain Green Commercial District and the Peterson Commercial District will take the place of the Commercial Buffer District, which is the only zone that is existing out of the zones being removed. And we decided on this zone change to make all of the existing and non-conforming uses conforming, all while limiting less desirable manufacturing. And so I kind of did some research, and in that commercial area right next to the airport on Commercial Street, only 4 of the businesses are permitted or actually allowed in the commercial buffer zone. And so we've put these uses all together in the Mountain Green Commercial. So we would like to change that to Mountain Green Commercial, and all these businesses will be conforming to their zone. Let's see, and then the proposed amendment also combines similar uses that also have the same allowances into a single category taken from the NAICS Association. So for example, in the use table we had electronic game arcades, pinball arcades, and video game arcades. So we grouped these into a single use category titled amusement arcades. And we have also added definitions for the uses that we grouped together and uses that could use more clarification. And in the staff report, all changes are shown in bold. So if you guys have any questions for me.
Any questions for Haley? I've got just one, and 85C-1. So it's the last sentence, it's the bolded language, says developments are intended to reduce impact adjacent properties by using landscaping setbacks and building design. So it's probably to mean to reduce impacts on adjacent properties? Is that what you're intending to say there?
Yes.
And then the question is that the form, so that's the correction in the language, but the intent, if you look like down at C, it says the regulations of this district are designed to promote and encourage the development of comparison shopping centers. And I think that's a better formulation than developments are intended to reduce impact on adjacent properties.
So remove that whole, the golden.
Or you could say the regulations of this district are intended to promote and, reduction of impact on adjacent properties by using landscaping, setbacks, and building design.
So
Something like
It
that.
has the regulations of this district in the sentence before that.
It does.
Do we just say it
So let's see,
again?
the regulations of the district and promote. So just put a comma after residence and reduce impact on adjacent properties by using landscaping, setbacks, and building design. So you're proposing to eliminate just one zone in which is actually shown on our zoning map, right? But do we have a zoning map amendment that corresponds to this? So we don't, if we were to pass this and eliminate the zones, then we don't leave it unzoned.
That would be the next step, once this was approved, we would come in with the.
But do we want the gap between, or do we want to approve them both at the same time?
I think either way is fine.
No, we need them together.
Together?
I think if you
Well, I
don't
mean-
do them together, you're gonna have the possibility of applications coming in and documents that don't support
Yeah, I agree.
each other.
My
Do you have
question
an
was
opinion,
probably
Lance?
rhetorical.
I think you're right either way.
Okay, so let's propose, are there any other questions for Haley? And then we can go into public hearing. There may be additional changes that we want to propose to the text. And then I think it is advisable to have a corresponding map amendment so that we don't leave something in limbo for whatever that period of time. Because who
Well-
knows when it comes back?
Well, and it just because we went through that once before and had issues. We had a chart, but we did not have a map that corresponded with it, and it created a lot of issues. Huh?
Well, let's fix all of that as part of the map amendment.
This is part of it.
And then,
That's
and
great.
then, so, I appreciate your work on this. What, just out of interest saying, what uses in that commercial area are not permitted, and or would we view them as pre-existing non-conforming, or did we just miss in the process when they were approved?
They were all.
They're just
pre-existing.
historical, pre-existing non-conforming uses?
Yes.
Okay,
For example, there's a woodworks shop, there's two woodwork shops, two plumbing businesses.
oh yeah, I see those trucks every morning. Okay,
And they're prohibited as of right now in the commercial buffer zone.
all right. Okay, anything else that, I mean, I live pretty close to that, and I don't note any obnoxious uses for an industrial area from my perspective, but I was just wondering. Okay. All right, if there's no further questions for Haley, then I would take a motion to go into public hearing.
Oh, motion to go to public hearing.
Okay, Member Haslam?
I'll second the motion.
Motion and a second to go into public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We have a list with 42 slots on it, but no one has signed up. Is there anyone that would like to speak in this public hearing with respect to this matter? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to go out of public hearing.
I'll second it.
Motion and second to go out of public hearing. All in favor? Aye.
Mr. Chair, I move that we postpone item number 2, discussion decision on a proposed amendment to Morgan County Code 8-5-4 in the zoning districts 8-5C-3 until, any thoughts? Until such time as a zoning map amendment is ready?
It would be a couple months
Okay.
before
So-
I appreciate trying to do this, and I really do appreciate the work that's gone into it. But we've done that once before. Roland's right. I'm trying to remember the circumstances surrounding it, but we did approve a zone change without the maps and ended up having to undo what we've done. So I'm really not comfortable moving forward without those maps.
So let's make sure we all understand the scope of the problem. So you've got an area that is presently, 2 areas presently zoned commercial buffer, correct?
Correct.
And you're reposing,
There's one main area,
One area.
okay,
commercial buffer.
so bring it up and let's look at it.
It's the Mountain Green Airport
It's-
buffer zone, right?
Yeah, it's not really the airport, it's across from it, that little,
Well, I don't know what's up under. What's driving it? Yeah, I don't know what's up under.
But we're eliminating that buffer across the county, right? So our other buffers will all be eliminated also. Correct.
is the Peterson one, okay, it is too.
So there's the Peterson one.
Okay.
So you want to eliminate that?
Which color?
Sorry,
red.
that's the orange.
Orange color,
The orange is one parcel of land
okay,
there.
okay.
It's hard to see with all the extra layers on there, but this orange commercial buffer as well. So it's actually part of the airport is on that, and then this is the commercial street where we have the non-conforming issues. My thought process was create the ordinance, then we come back and rezone. So we know what we're going to. I mean, we're probably not gonna change the ordinance, but we've advertised and all that for a rezoning, and then we change the ordinance. It just seems
So-
simpler to go 1, 2, and I think the other problem we had was that that we amended the districts. We didn't change the zoning. Anyway.
So what if we were to approve the ordinance, but indicate that until the zoning map is modified, make the effective date of this particular modification the date upon which the zoning map is amended?
That would work, but I think that illustrates the issue is, those things don't conform today. So we have CB zoning there, and, I mean, half of them are actually legal conforming uses.
Yeah, they're existing non-conforming uses. I'm not worried about what's
So
there.
why
I'm
not
worried
the
about what
ordinance?
gets applied for in the interim.
Like a pet crematorium, maybe. 'Cause I
Isn't
think
that
was
already
our
there?
previous issue.
That was our,
That was the one that bit us.
It's part of all that, right?
So that, because I'm not worried, if they've got pre-existing non-conforming use status, they have it. That's fine. It's just new applications submitted during a period where we have a zoning map that identifies that as commercial buffer, but we have no zone called commercial buffer. So if somebody submits an application for whatever they decide to submit it for, what criteria are we evaluating it on? How have we plainly prohibited the use during that interim period of time? Now, if there was a commercial buffer, Mountain Green, and a commercial buffer, Peterson, then I would simply say our zoning map is to change the name of the zone and modify the requirements. But you've got commercial buffer spread over those 2 areas. Are the requirements different in the 2? I think they were, right?
The development standard.
Yeah, the development standards in the Mountain Green is a little different than the Peterson, so they're different.
This would literally be a pending ordinance, though, wouldn't it? If someone applied for something that may be
It wouldn't even be pending.
off
It
of
would
this,
be
I mean,
the ordinance.
will it be pending until it's voted on, but again, it'd be like.
Well, what would be pending is if I submitted the adopted this tonight, I'll just say it this way. My preference would be, we're 99% of the way there, let's get this ordinance adopted and changed. Direct me also tonight to initiate a rezone on all the commercial buffer zones. Now we've got a pending ordinance, and it's approved.
That's a good solution, I
There
think.
you go. Okay, I'll rescind my motion,
But make a new one.
and I'll make a new motion.
Okay, so say that part again, Lance.
I would prefer to adopt the ordinance as we have tonight, so that that item is completed. Also, in tonight's, immediately after this, just direct staff, make a motion that they initiate the necessary properties, the rezoning process on the necessary properties to change commercial buffer to the Mountain Green or Peterson commercial zones.
Okay, so that's what you want to do, is you want to change it to the Mountain Green commercial,
Correct,
and you want to change the other one to the Peterson commercial.
correct.
But that would give us a pending ordinance, which would give us some
Okay.
protection during the interim,
Yeah.
which was the concern, right?
Which means you have to complete it within 6 months.
Well, we really should be back to you guys, thank a month from now.
Yep.
2 months should be plenty of time.
Yeah, I agree.
I understand the concern, but at the same time, we're holding off on a lot of work that's so close to being done.
Okay.
Okay,
Did you have
so,
further questions?
yeah, so I'm missing something. So right now, we ended up eliminating commercial buffer
That's our proposal.
out of our ordinance.
That's the proposal.
And replacing it with Peterson and Mountain Green commercial zones.
We already have Peterson and Mountain Green in our ordinance.
It's true, but we're yeah. Those zones exist, they're not currently zoned anywhere. So those were added to the zoning ordinance, but no properties have been rezoned that.
I think originally the intent was to rezone these, and it never
I think so,
occurred.
yes.
Okay, just to be clear, I mean, I understand the intent of what we're trying to do, to be clear with the text of your document here. It's saying to replace those with the Mountain Green. To do that, is that the zoning, the rezone process though, right? So if we vote this the way it's written, are we trying to say, see where I'm going with that?
So what we're doing is we're changing our zoning text to eliminate a zone, commercial buffer, and replace it with Mountain Green commercial and Peterson commercial, which are existing zones but are being slightly modified in terms of the use tables in this proposal. So that accomplishes an amendment to our zoning ordinance. And then we want to give them direction, the staff direction, to process a zoning map amendment to assign those two zones, the Peterson commercial and the Mountain Green commercial, to Mountain Green to this area in orange, this commercial buffer area, and the Peterson in the one that we looked at previously.
And
Does
this
that-
might just be just semantics, I'm just trying to be clear. Is 85C1 purpose, is that portion of this document going to be part of the ordinance? When
Yes.
it's adopted? Okay. So if in there it says that we are replacing commercial buffer with Mountain Green commercial, are we starting that rezone process through adopting this document?
Yes, but I think we need to formalize it with the request to do a map amendment, zoning map amendment.
But we're okay to leave that statement in there that we're making that replacement in this document, or should that wait until the rezone process happens?
Well, the statement of change is in the staff report.
Yeah, that's
not
not the
actually
zone
in
text itself.
It's
Yeah,
not down in the purpose?
No,
Okay. If it's not down in the purpose, I'm not concerned, concerned.
no, it doesn't talk about that in the
I've been
purpose.
trying to scroll back up and see where I read that, and I haven't found it yet, so.
And that's kind of what we discussed in the staff report.
And hey, I know that's not going to be part of the document through the definitions or the purpose or any of those different chapters, then I'm not as concerned about it.
Yeah, it's on, if you're looking on your PDF, it's page 36 in the summary. I think that's the language you're talking about.
But the text itself is on page 40 and 41, and it doesn't include that.
Okay, so,
I see it here on
Put it
36.
another way, you have two legislative actions here. One is amending an ordinance, the other would be a rezone.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't crossing those
Right.
processes.
Even if we created it here, I mean, we're creating the ordinance. Now we have to apply that ordinance, and where are we going to apply it? To the existing commercial buffer zones. Through the
Right.
rezoning process.
And that really is what my question was, is are we crossing those processes? And that being up in the staff report, I'm not as concerned about it.
Okay, any further questions?
yeah. So what's our purpose for eliminating commercial buffer?
It's redundant with the Mountain Green Commercial, and in 2016-17 code amendment, they wanted to go to Mountain Green Commercial and Peterson Commercial, away from commercial buffer. Plus, in this particular case, it does not conform to the uses that are there.
Okay, but part of the problem, I mean, we're talking about that one right there. Part of the problem is that commercial zone was there before them houses got stuck there. So now we're trying to fix a problem that I mean, you're talking about the plumbing outfit is not, the plumbing shops are not supposed to be in there, correct?
They're not currently an allowed use in that zone. I'm not saying they shouldn't be.
In the commercial buffer zone.
In the commercial buffer.
Okay, but they were there before that became a commercial buffer.
They are legal, allowed.
And by making this change, Roland, that will make them permitted uses.
Yes, we're gonna take them from
They're
legal non-conforming
updating the
to legal.
table.
So no one's saying that they need to move by virtue of this
I'm not-
change. It updates their status, upgrades.
We're actually making the zone that meets what's actually on the ground and how that property's been used for years. And this was just, I think this got dropped between planning directors and the clarity and the nuances were lost.
How could that have happened?
Well, and
That
I just,
changes.
I mean, that's okay, we agree to disagree, but, I mean, I'm just looking at all the issues and headaches we went through, you know, when I was on the planning commission and going through this table and making all the zones, and I'll be straight with you, I'm gonna vote against whatever you're doing, so let's go.
So I've got a question for you. We're eliminating a generic zone that can be applied countywide and replacing it with zones that are named specifically for locations in the county. Are we saying that we don't foresee a need for this ever coming up again somewhere else? Or how would you address this if a developer came in and we saw a need for a commercial buffer area some other place in the county besides Peterson and Mountain Green?
Yeah, that was, when I first read the ordinance and saw this, I guess it can be a little misleading. I didn't like that either. I think it's just a name. We can call it Mountain Green Commercial, doesn't mean it can't be in Croydon. You know, but I think that's the problem with naming a zone after a location. So generally, we don't do that. But the planning commission, I think that was, they wanted to have a Mountain Green Commercial, and I think it's a small area. I think there's, you know, if another area of the county of Croydon, and I just say that because Morgan City's gonna do
Right.
its own.
Right.
But, you know, if the Stoddard commercial area came in, they would probably just come in under commercial highway or one of the other zones. They wouldn't go to that specific, that's kind of a fewer uses. Well, I don't know about that, but I think they would just go under existing zoning. By manufacturing and more technical professional campus, they would go in one of the more general.
Neighborhood commercial.
I don't think it would create.
Well,
too big an issue.
I think you're probably right. If we eliminate it, then that wouldn't be an option. My question is, is there a need to retain some sort of method for people to use that type of zoning? Is there enough crossover? And it's just because, again, it's the semantics. We're naming it now over a geographic location in the county. Is that going to affect somebody's ability to make that application?
Okay, I mean, if there's the potential for it, they could always just go up, say up in uses more, into a more permitted zone and ask for that.
We can change the name.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going.
Yeah.
Do we need two separate zones like that, a Peterson and a Mountain Green?
They don't have identical uses, so I think we need two of them. But we could do commercial 1 and commercial 2, or commercial A and commercial B.
The Mountain Green
zone.
commercial was really catered to the existing uses there, whereas the Peterson commercial it added that one specific use of the existing commercial buffer property. I mean, to your point, we have 9 commercial zones and industrial zones. That is not a lot. We could slice this into a lot smaller. I mean, I've probably seen 20 or 30.
Give it 4 or
commercial
5
zones.
months before you start that process, will you?
Yeah,
Thank you.
January 2.
Yes. Anyway, that's where I'm coming
No,
from.
I-
It's just that name hang up where we're identifying it specific like that.
From an economic development standpoint, if they don't want to be Mountain Green commercial and Stoddard, but they want to do the uses, they would just go up to light manufacturing or to commercial highway or another more general zone and be able to fit it in.
But technically, nothing would prohibit somebody from requesting a zone change to Mountain Green commercial for a property in Stoddard.
Yeah.
There's nothing that prohibits them from doing it. It's just odd naming.
So am I the only one that thinks it's weird to name it that way?
I have no objection to changing the name.
I don't
You
have
know,
any ideas
to
or
your
suggestions,
point,
but
I think future councils or planning commissions might look at that and misunderstand the intent,
Yeah, and
you know,
that's
so maybe you're
one of
right.
the things we do all the time is create issues for people that come along later and have no idea the history on it. And so I question a lot of things that seem stupid to question for that reason.
I have no objection to changing the names. As far as the comment about, you know, well, what about other zones? Just looking through the table itself, there's actually a lot of other commercial zones that are probably more, have more opportunity for different business types than either of those two. You know, commercial highway and neighborhood commercial.
Like I said, I don't have any ideas for changing those names, so if somebody wants to throw that out, great. That was just my questions. You both, all your planning commission experience.
Okay, so question, Lance. So you're saying you want to eliminate the commercial buffer and we want to rename that to Mountain Green Commercial, is that what you're saying?
The one in Mountain Green.
Correct,
And the other one would be Peterson.
correct.
Okay, so we're eliminating recreational sports club facilities in that area. So right now, it's a commercial buffer, and that's allowed, that's permitted. But if we eliminate commercial buffer and change it to Mountain Green, even in your chart, it's not allowed in Mountain Green Commercial or Peterson Commercial, correct?
I'm trying to find a user.
It's under entertainment.
Which one are you looking at? Say it again.
Well, so if you go to Sterling Codifiers, you go to our ordinance,
Okay, but we're amending the Sterling
Under-
Codifiers ordinance.
okay, and I understand that. Okay, so right now, under entertainment, recreational sport club facilities are permitted in the commercial buffer. Okay? They're not allowed in Mountain Green Commercial or Peterson Commercial. if we go the route you want and eliminate commercial buffer, then recreational sports facilities are not allowed in those two areas.
Correct.
And that's my question, what's wrong with having a recreational sport facility in that area?
Maybe nothing, but it's a way of creating it's a smaller use. These are, the commercial buffer areas are adjacent to residential, and putting a large recreational facility is,
I mean, there's more of them on there,
it's a
but,
choice. Like any other zoning ordinance, it's a choice between what type of uses we think are appropriate or not. And that's why I say Morgan slices that into 9 different levels. You could do it much more refined.
okay.
Do it less refined, just commercial and business and retail. I mean, that was the discussion.
Okay, so I guess part of my question is, what drove this? Do we have an application that doesn't meet the zoning? I mean, where did this come from?
So multiple reasons, but one in particular is, in this specific area, is the amount of legal non-conforming uses that don't match the commercial buffer zone. It's way more restrictive than what we have there. So that was one impetus. Another is just an annual review. We looked at what we adopted a year ago, which was quite an in-depth process, and we said, let's look at it again. Now that we've got a little fresh eyes, we've taken a step back. There's been several items that have come up that we go, well, shoot, we missed that one, or we missed this one. Haley's done a great job of taking and analyzing the different uses from the different zones and putting it together into, I think it's a better ordinance now. It's more refined, it's clearer, and we keep, I would say, 99% of what we had. You point out one that's changes.
Well, there's more than just that one, I'm just,
Well, sure, and there are several, there's changes, I'm not saying there isn't, but those changes are discussed at a couple at least, work sessions with the planning commission, and, it's a little bit of a judgment call, but they felt really good about it, staff feels good about it, and that's how.
okay.
So what if we just go with commercial district A for airport,
I like it.
commercial district B?
Very creative.
Yeah, that's about as creative as I get. I color with black crayon.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah,
Okay. Sorry, Lance, I'm having a hard time following the conversation between you and Roland, but we're talking about the area over by the airport, the Mountain Green Business Park area, correct?
Correct. Yes.
So recreational uses are not in there, or?
No.
Because we've got the Scotsman Center and the dance studio, so I would think that both of those would fall under that if we're trying to eliminate non-conforming.
It's not in that zone. The Scotsman Center's not in that zone.
Correct.
Okay.
but there is a dance studio
There is a
in there
dance
now.
studio in
Is there? Is dance studios in here?
Where?
It's right,
Companies.
it's right
it. Morgan Academy of
next to
Dance.
the Scotsman Center. It's right in that same area.
2 doors down from Flapjack Prison.
So the Scotsman Center and the dance studio are in TPC.
I thought,
Okay.
maybe
Which is a
you could be
permitted
correct, you could be correct. I thought the dance studio was up that commercial street.
No, dance studio is right here.
Okay.
Dance studio moved when the crematorium went in.
Yeah, they didn't want to smell dead dogs.
Oh, that's
okay.
right, I forgot.
That's right.
Okay.
They were
Yeah, I
worried
just
about
wanted
that.
to clarify. I can't see the map on the
Sure.
YouTube
And-
video.
And Roland, if there's other uses that you're concerned about, I mean, if we can have the staff prepare a table of what uses were eliminated, maybe you know off the top of your head, Haley or Lance.
Well, and to the one you're talking
Oh, that's
about,
okay.
recreational sport club facilities was changed basically to fitness and recreational sports centers.
Well, no, without going down through and checking
NAICS
everyone.
terminology changed. And so now.
And
we
so
moved that
it is an
definition
allowed
a little
use,
bit.
is what you're saying.
What?
It is, but so what you're saying is an allowed use in the commercial district?
Well, no, it's not allowed, it's not
Okay.
permitted in those buffer zones, or in those.
Okay. Oh,
in the Mountain Green and Peterson.
okay.
Commercial A. and
All right.
commercial B.
I'm ready for a motion, either to postpone this item or to move it on.
Does the A and B resolve your concern?
As far as.
The naming issues.
Are there other concerns we haven't addressed before I make a motion?
Not that I'm aware of, just we had that one correction in the
Well,
text.
hurry, or I'm gonna make a negative motion.
All right, I'll make a motion.
The A and B is okay, but I'm sorry, but the planner, I mean, could we say limited A and limited B, limited commercial A and limited commercial B? Because that's really what we're talking about, and kind of help describe.
They are a limited zone.
Sure.
If we called it limited, that would help to understand, hey, this isn't a full-on highway commercial uses, this is meant to be.
It just sounds so much more professional too. Throwing that limited.
That limited.
And just commercial A.
Lance, I do have a question. In the sample motion here, it just talks about section, Morgan County Code Section 8-5C. But in our agenda, we've got Morgan County Code 8-5-4 and 8-5C-3. Do we need to have both in there? Because it looks like we're making changes to both, aren't we?
Yeah, yes, the one,
8-5-4.
the one is the
right?
zoning districts, and then the other one is the use table, isn't it, Lance? I believe.
Yeah, 8-5-1 is correct, Roland.
Yeah, so
8-5-1 would be the zoning districts list, correct? And then 8-5-C would be all the commercial. And then that captures everything that falls under that umbrella.
So,
You could even just say 8-5. It's been advertised and noticed so that people can know that we're changing the commercial zones.
it's got 8-5-4 as on the agenda.
I haven't seen that.
And 8-5C3 on the agenda.
No, it's different than the application.
Haley, were there any
Proposed
changes to
amendment
the
8-5-1.
definitions?
So, in the application.
It'd be 8-2-1.
Eight dash what?
8-2-1, because there's changes to the definitions.
Definitions. And then it would be 8-5C-1 for the purposes. And then it would be 8-5C-3 for the use regulations.
Okay,
Well, then
so
that changes everything. We got
that's my next question.
that's not how it's advertised. We need to have it advertised as that.
We advertised 8-5C-3, but the other two were not part of the agenda
And you
advertisement.
advertised 8-5-4.
Dash 4.
But you're saying there's not a change to 5-4, right? Okay, so that one's incorrect.
I'm guessing it was supposed to be a 1 rather than a 4.
Okay.
Let me check how it was actually advertised as opposed to just the council agenda.
Okay, yeah.
Council agenda is our official advertisement for our vote.
What's your thought on that?
Then we should
We gotta re-advertise. with the
postpone,
correct one.
renotice, reopen the public hearing, and then take a vote next time.
That's what I'm thinking.
I concur.
You wanna make the motion, Roland? Get her done.
No, because my motion's gonna be just to deny the whole thing. So
Alright,
you
fine.
better make a
I'll
motion
make-
to postpone this so we can re-advertise it correctly.
All right. Mr. Chair, I'm gonna make a motion that we postpone item number 2 and re-advertise with the correct Morgan County Code numbers until our next meeting.
I'll second that.
Do you want to list those, Mike?
Yes, so the correct numbers to advertise are Morgan County Code, Section 8-2-1, Section 8-5C-1, and Section 8-5C-3. Is that correct? Okay.
8-2-1,
Yep,
8-5C1,
yep,
and 8-5C3.
3.
correct. You go.
Do you want the staff to bring it back with the corrections we've talked about, or the changes? the
Yes,
necessary
and with
corrections?
the minor amendments that were made tonight.
Okay, any questions on the motion? It's a motion to postpone for re-advertisement with the proper section numbers and to have it come back with the staff with the modifications discussed tonight.
And that's going to be on, what, October what?
October 6th, is that right?
Yep, that's, I think.
6th October? Okay.
Okay, no further questions on the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
You're even against postponing it. Okay. All right.
It's just-
voted against it.
Okay, thank you. Next item, number 3.
You want to add that second motion, directing staff to start the
Oh, yes, I'd also like to make a motion, Mr. Chair, that we direct the staff to initiate the rezone process on the properties that are currently located in the commercial buffer district, CB zone district.
Okay.
Districts, there's 2.
Second.
Okay. All right, there's a motion by member Newton, seconded by member Swan, to direct the staff to begin the zoning map amendment process with respect to the commercial buffer zones. Any questions on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Okay. All right, item number 3 on our agenda. Discussion decision, Golden Hills concept plan, a proposed 16-lot subdivision concept plan located at 2601.3 north of East Canyon State Park. Okay. Lance, is that your presentation?
I was on the planning commission.
Okay, this is a concept plan request for the concept subdivision for Golden Hills. It is on 2,600 acres. This is east of East Canyon State Park, actually north. It has quite a history. I won't go into it, but they've come back and have water and addressed many of the issues. They are proposing to have 16 lots, ranging from 160 acres in size to one's up to over 180 acres. The Morgan County Planning Commission met on August 27th and recommended approval. One of the main issues was that was discussed and that has to be addressed is fire and fire protection. The applicant, along with the fire department, have worked together and have decided that, and it's in the motion from the planning commission, that they will, let's see if I can, there's very specific language that they're
Number
gonna address.
Is that the one you're talking about? Number 8 in there?
Number 8 says the condition is to address the fire department's requirements, but specifically they're requiring 500-gallon minute tanks with at least 200 psi residual flow with a flowing pressure of at least 40 minutes. And basically that requires them to have a large enough tank to allow the fire department time to get up there. It can turn on the sprinkler, it will operate, these homes will all be sprinkled. So that will give time for the sprinklers to operate for a long enough time to allow the fire department to get there.
So none of these will be on individual wells, it'll all be on that community
No,
system?
well, no, actually, each of these will be on individual wells, and each lot will have the 20,000 gallon tank. That- Each lot will do that. The concern was, the fire department wanted to have, the whole system, under it. But given the topography and the lengths and the size of this property, that was not feasible. The initial proposal was 5,000 gallon tanks and 10,000 gallon tanks were discussed, and the applicant can go into more detail if you'd like, but, those were discussed, but the fire department was still concerned that if it takes them 30 minutes to get there and they have 10 minutes of water, not really gonna do any good. So by requiring it this level and these specific requirements of 20,000 gallon tank and a certain amounts, that will ensure that the sprinkler systems for each of those homes operates for at least long enough for fire to get there, and then they have some ability that maybe they can.
Did I hear you say 200 PSI?
20, sorry.
20.
I may have said 200, but 20 is what they. So, yes, it's quite a system, but the alternative of running 10 miles of pressurized water line is worse. So, and that was a significant issue that they were able to come up with a solution to the fire department. So, Planning Commission is recommending approval. One of the unique things about this development, it's all, it complies with future land use map and the zoning. We did a rezone for a small area, I believe up in this area last year, so that it would comply and would be MU 160. I just want to show you the road network. So you can just barely see these small blue circles on each of the roads. There will be 3 main access roads into the lots, serving different number of lots on each one of these. This is Highway 65 here, and these will be taking access just off this map, is Highway 66. The red areas here will be private streets, and we require that for homes, over 4 homes. And so that's a paved road. But we thought it would be a little over the top to require paved roads to go all the way to the end, when it's just accessing, in this case, 4 lots, this case, these 4 lots, and this case, this is actually all private lane. So they're able to step down to a private lane standard, which doesn't require to be paved, but it does have to still handle a 75,000-pound emergency vehicle. So we'll still have that, but these red sections will be the only paved areas. The purple will be an all-improved all-weather surface, improved all-weather surface. And then a small section of access easement, which would just, because it's going to one home, it's not more than 1,000 feet, it would be just an access easement, which is 26, and it's actually very similar to the private lane. They also have secondary access here for fire access roads. And it's important to realize this road's about just over a mile long back to some of those lots. So they're long roads and they're back in there, so.
So is the yellow the secondary access?
Yellow is the secondary
Okay.
access.
And those will be all-weather surface?
Those will all be all ones.
So Lance, I noticed there's a note from the county engineer specific to this. What are your thoughts on his note there? He notes that in other subdivisions, we have looked at the number of lots in the subdivision to determine the type of road throughout the entire subdivision. Now, this is unique because we're talking about huge acreage compared to most subdivisions. That being said, what are your thoughts on this? I mean, if we apply this, could we have others come in and say, well, I'm doing a subdivision elsewhere in the county on smaller acreage and I want to apply the same type of idea where I go from paved road to non-paved surface as I service fewer lots?
And we consider that, because, like you said, we want to have a consistent standard. this is very unique. I mean, it's just such a long road. It's got such a limited amount of traffic that'll be on it. Any other subdivision, even if 1 acre, 5 acre, 10 acre, 20 acre subdivisions, you're gonna get a lot more traffic than it justifies and you're gonna do it. This would be a unique situation that justifies that tweak, if you will. So staff, we're comfortable with it. Engineering's, as you read in their memo, sort of comfortable with it, but willing. If we decide that no, we think that those should be paved for that distance, and, that's a lot to maintain, it's a lot, it's just, it seemed like overkill in this particular situation. And I don't think it sets a precedent because it is such a unique development.
And I'm not advocating either way, I just want to make sure our bases are covered. Jan, what's your thought on that? Do you have a?
I looked at it just briefly. I remember back a few years ago when they were, developers were trying to develop this with a lot more density. And I remember we had sage grouse folks and all kinds of other folks in here talking about habitats up there. And so I recreated there, and I could just picture paved roads all over that would not look good. And so, unless you think it's going to set a dangerous precedent, the council's allowed to take that into consideration. It sounded like your engineer didn't have a lot of heartburn with it, and I definitely don't want to override that either. So.
These are all private
roads.
roads.
These are all private.
I'm fine either
Okay.
way, but I don't think paved roads would look that great up there. Because basically it's 160 acres for one cabin. And so it would all be paved rather than dirt, and I don't know if you want to see that up there or not.
No, I mean, I think I agree with you. I just want to make sure we don't set a precedence unknowingly.
Yeah.
Is there something that we should do to try to protect ourselves from setting that?
I haven't had enough time to, I haven't talked to Mark specifically on that. and
Okay.
If we could sort something out like that.
I think you're setting a precedent for 160-acre lot subdivisions.
And that's fair too. I mean, if that's what we're setting it for, I'm okay with that, because I agree. A dirt road makes a lot more sense, to be honest, than or a gravel road versus,
I would usually defer to our fire folks and say, can you get your apparatus up there for a fire out? And if they're signing off on it, and I know they're signing off on it, of course, he's a mountain biker and probably likes trails, but with those folks signing off on it, I wouldn't want to be the deal breaker and say, just don't do it. Because I don't think there's many other areas in the county that could do the same kind of development anyway. So it's not really a precedent if there are other areas that really could do that. So I would support you if you agree with it.
Any further questions for staff?
Well, just for clarification, so down on Exhibit G, it's talking about, you mentioned the 20,000 gallon storage tank, but all the stuff down in Golden Hills response refers to a 10,000 gallon storage tank.
Right.
I just want to make sure that's clarified, that it's a 20,000 gallon storage tank
So that's the
in
agreement that's.
in their concept
Right.
approval.
That's part of why I mentioned it specifically in the staff report, that is what they've agreed to. What was put in there is that's where the discussions were coming into the planning commission meeting. So
No, and I understand it. I'm just saying,
so I
on the
kept it in there
concept
because-
approval, I want to make sure that it's in there at 20,000 and not the 10 like what's in all of the responses.
We could add a condition of approval. I think it's already in the discussion, but we could easily add a condition of approval that says it will be the 20,000 standards that were discussed, 20,000 gallon tank standards that were discussed at and agreed to at the planning commission. So we have
Well,
the
that
planning
or
commission
just
record that that's what is agreed to. We have and now this meeting. I think that would certainly not hurt to add that as a condition of approval.
Okay. Oh, I know what I was going to ask you. Just a second. Number three, where'd you go? So the 800 gallons, that does not come into play until we're doing preliminary, correct?
That's when I have to verify that, but
Okay, so they have to verify 800 gallons per day for every lot.
no, the standard in the subdivision ordinance is somewhere on the 2,600 acres, they need to have a well that runs that amount. And then they've done a lot of research, but our requirements is that they establish that somewhere on the property there is a well that is functioning at that rate so that we know it's not a,
No, this says 800 gallons per day irrigation shares are provided for each lot. Not one, it says for each lot.
well, I'm sorry, I was confusing well production with shared rights. You're right, that says shared rights.
All right, but that doesn't really come into play until we get to preliminary. Okay.
The applicant is here if you'd like to ask them any questions.
Any questions for the applicant? Do you have any concern about the 20,000 gallon tank?
We're good.
Okay. I think that is an important condition of approval. Just okay. Anything else you'd like to say to us? Otherwise, I'll see if somebody's ready to make a motion.
I was just grateful to be back in front of you, and we think we worked out a very good deal with the fire chief. So ultimately, there'll be 320,000 gallons of fire storage water up there, and it'll be very consistent.
Great.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the Golden Hills Estates subdivision concept plan, application number 20.036, allowing for a 16-lot subdivision of land located at approximately 5536 South Highway 66 in unincorporated Morgan County, based on the findings and with the conditions listed in the staff report dated September 5th, 2020, and with the clarification that it will be updated to note the size of water tank to be 20,000 rather than 10,000 gallons, fire protection water tank.
Second.
Okay. Motion by member Newton, second by member Haslam. Any questions on the motion? So, and when you say updated, you mean as a condition of approval?
As a condition, correct.
Okay. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, item number 4, member Newton, discussion decision consultant contract for reconnaissance level surveyor for the Historical Society and CLG grant.
Yeah, so what's that? Server. So basically what this is you may remember some time ago, earlier this year, we talked about the fact that the Historical Society had applied for and received some grant funding to help with the Historical Society. They would like to use a portion of that grant funding to hire a contractor to come in and do a survey of properties within the county that may qualify as historical sites. Now, this would not mean that if a property was identified as historical, it imposes any type of restriction on that property. It just means that it would be identified as such, and then the Historical Society could work with the property owners if they wish to either try to preserve that history or designate it as a historical site.
So I had a question on the contract.
Yes.
We're the client, and we're doing the reconnaissance level survey for 542 buildings in Morgan City. Are there buildings in the county as well, or is it all limited to the
I
city?
thought it included county as well.
It doesn't say
But
that.
I can clarify that with, it's got to be county for that many structures anyway. But I can clarify that if you'd like with
I'm
with
surprised
Rachel.
there's 542.
When we talked about it in our meeting, I thought it was county.
That's my
It
understanding
just says
as well.
city here that, and
Yeah.
so I just,
Lots of times when people type stuff up and they're not from up here, they just put Morgan City.
Yeah.
It was a contract that person had used with the city. That may have just been one that.
I'm sure it's boilerplate
I think it is.
language. So, I mean, we can definitely suggest that update as part of our
Okay.
agreeing to
Any
it.
questions for Member Haslam?
Member Haslam.
Sorry, well, yeah. Any
You-
questions for Member
No.
Haslam? Because he
No.
probably wants to vote no on it.
I didn't vote no on the last one, come on.
Sorry, Member Newton.
Any other questions?
Okay, take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the consultant contract for Renaissance Level Sorry,
Reconnaissance level.
I was reading off of
You're
the.
good.
The server.
Yeah, surveyor for the historical site CLG grant with the change from Morgan City to Morgan County.
I'll second.
Okay.
It's my third one tonight.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? It's for approval. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, our next item is the Airport Advisory Board, discussion decision. Next steps concerning potential airport expansion. This is George Sousa, he chairs our Airport Advisory Board. Julie Chapman's also on the board. Remind me?
Pete Robbins,
Pete, thanks, sorry.
because I'm not always in the face something.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate your service on the board. George, I'll turn this time over to you, and do we have that uploaded where he can bring that up on the screen? Okay.
And Joe is here as well, so Joe's the airport manager.
Joe's the airport manager. But he also attends all of the board meetings, so, or the advisory board meetings.
Yes, yes. Okay, so, on the other, you can quote the other one, Stacy, it's just my talking points for tonight. So we wanted to talk about, obviously, airport stuff, but specifically our plan to meet the needs of guys that want to build hangars, and they want 60 by 60 hangars, with the needs of the county to generate income. So we're just trying to match the two up and come up with a plan that does that. So, there's, my talking points are a little bit different than yours, but as a basic overview, phase one focuses on the DD and EE row hangars, and it converts those from 50 by 40s to 60 by 60s, and then it adds another row of 3 60 by 60 hangars on the a new FF row. So this is a spreadsheet that analyzes that, and I'll go over that in a second. So just some numbers for you here. Based on my hangar, my personal hangar, which is BB4, I can tell you that it generates to the county $2,070 in taxes. It will this year coming up. I think that's pretty consistent with the other hangars. I don't know because I don't have access to everybody else's hangar. So I'm just giving you my numbers. And I pay $540 in annual lease fees. So at that rate, approximately $2,700 a year, excluding whatever goes to the state. And I'm not exactly sure what that is. It might be $254. If I read the my tax notice correctly. Excluding that, that's $31.7 thousand annually to the county. If you include that, it probably goes down to something like 28,000. So I think that's a significant increase in income to the county from the airport. So we're trying to do this for that reason.
Is that your total tax bill, including the school district taxes, or is that just the county general fund
That's everything.
portion? That's everything.
Yeah.
So our portion of that is really about a quarter maybe a little less than that.
If that's how you break it out, I didn't
No, I
know
think
that
it's a
was
different
the way you
tax
would
rate
look at it.
on his hanger than he does his like normal property tax. 'Cause your
So is there
tax
not an
bill-
education, a school district portion?
Is the tax bill you get on your hanger what different than the tax bill you get for your home?
The numbers are different, but no, the form looks essentially the same. It's one of these.
It's different.
It's not as long.
So which portion is actually the county portion? Because folks look at the tax bills and think that they're paying the county 20,000. That money comes to the county, but over half of it goes to the school district. $325 of that 2,000 actually comes to the county. Everything else goes to the school district and other state and EMS service and the library and et cetera.
Weber Basin Water.
Weber Basin Water. So how much was it again?
So
Okay.
You completely exclude all this, the other funds that it goes to, even though they are county, sponsored organizations, right?
The school district is not county sponsored at all and has nothing to do with us.
They just like to drain them.
That's stuff the states assessed us with, that we pay regardless.
Yeah, so the only benefit to the county would be the county general fund. 911 service, I guess we could consider county because that comes through us and we pay, although it doesn't really benefit us directly in that way. But of those line items, it sounds like it's really just the 325. And the only reason I ask is because that changes these numbers slightly. If we say, well, the county's not getting $2,000, the county's getting $325 per hanger
It all changes things significantly.
in payback, yeah, which will change these years. And that's okay. I mean, that's not a deal killer. It just want to be clear of what we're doing.
But yeah, but that just now changed his bottom line, his sell point.
Considerably.
Significantly, yes.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. And that was not my understanding of how things work, so my apologies.
No, you're okay. That's actually education that the general public needs, because every time we talk about any type of a tax increase, people come in and say, well, you already increased my taxes. Well, no, the school district did. The county is separate from that, and so, anyway.
So it's not that there's a certain amount that has to be paid, and it can be paid, let's talk about the school district, so, there's not a certain amount that has to be paid there, it's every taxing thing that you do, every taxing notice that, like this, all of that money goes to the school district, no matter how big it is.
That line item that says school district, that money goes to the school district from every piece of property tax that comes into the county. Now, the county is the collecting agent, so we collect all that money, but most of that money doesn't stay with the county. Most all of it goes to other entities, all of those entities that are listed there.
But it's not as if you're filling out buckets and once they reach a certain level, that money is excess and
Nope.
comes to the county.
Every dime that's on that line item goes to the school district.
Yeah, so that absolutely changes things.
But perhaps, I'm assuming you've got some
Well-
formulas in here, perhaps we can just update those numbers and it'll kick out a new number?
Yeah, we can.
Okay,
It'll be significantly different.
that's okay, I mean, that's why we're talking about it, right?
Okay, so let's move on, and then we'll get to this in just a second. So the Phase 2 area is for the Forest Service and the commercial use. And so our plan that we have now protects that area, but it still provides infrastructure that they can tie into should that be used. And we do have a proprietary plan from an individual to make use of that area right now. So we do see potential there. If the Forest Service moved, they would vacate their other building and then would repurpose that for something else. And I believe somebody has indicated a desire to do that, so. That allows for the additional income.
Remodeling for them.
What's
So
that?
they better not move, we're just remodeling it.
Yeah, I know.
That's right, yeah. Okay, I met yesterday, this is a related but different matter, with Cottonwood Mutual Water Company and Wasatch Civil, the county engineer was there, and we were talking about the fire suppression on the west side, which is not up to what the fire department would like to see. And we think that the cost to improve it is gonna be around $70,000. And we're hoping that they will cost share Cottonwood Mutual. And that was the point of the meeting yesterday. So, Mr. Miller, was trying to convince them to reach some level of cost sharing. And I think they will do it, but it may take a month or more to come to some sort of an agreement on what they're gonna provide. But that's a related but separate issue that Cottonwood Mutual wants to tie together. We don't think they belong quite together, but they are related, so that's something to mention.
Say that again.
So Cottonwood Mutual, they're part of our phase one changes and the cost that they have presented to us.
And phase one is which part again?
The changes to the hangar sizes. So going.
But that's still over on D, D, E, E, and FF.
Correct.
Okay, got it, okay.
So they want to tie the water infrastructure changes on the new side, on the east side, to improving the fire suppression on the west side. And I don't know that they're taking a firm position on it, but they would like to see the two things happen probably simultaneously. I don't know if they have the authority to make the two things, or to make one a prerequisite for the other. I don't know if they can do that or not. And I kind of don't think they would push it that hard, but that's kind of the wording that they have used with us. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm just looking at, you're saying the west side is where the old hangars are, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so I'm just looking at their advantage to having that updated, why they would cost share on that.
Oh, I think for homes further up the road and perhaps the, is it North Side Creek?
North Side Creek?
Water park further up? Yeah. I think there's reason for them to help out with that so that they could extend it further up. I really don't know for sure, but I see that as a possibility.
So do they have a main line that runs up Cottonwood Road? I mean, they got a small
They
one
have
that,
something feeding that hydrant there.
well, they got a 4-inch line that feeds the old part of the old part of the airport.
Yes, with a very old pump that produces very little output, that the fire department wants to replace with two newer ones, separated 250 feet or more, to service, or to be ready to service the old side, the west side of the airport. So,
Okay.
So that would, they would tie into the line along the road that goes to the Scotsman Center. So there's a tie-in point halfway down that road on the south side, and that's where they would tie in. And then they would bring it up the road and cross over twice to put fire hydrants on the furthest west side of all the hangars along that road, separated with enough distance so that they could put out a fire on any of those hangars there.
Okay.
Wasatch Civil estimates that at $70,000. So we're hoping for some kind of cost sharing from Cottonwood Mutual on that.
Okay.
Okay, to the spreadsheet, which will have to be done entirely. Well, not quite entirely. So there's I think you probably have seen this before. I added a new column in yellow over here, and it's also over here further down, because I realized in thinking about this that the current infrastructure fee of $35.01 for the changes that were made back in 2008 or before, that's all been paid for already. So I was counting that as if there was a bucket that still needed to be filled up with those infrastructure fees, but the reality is it's already been paid off. So the columns in
Where's
yellow
35.01?
reflect the full infrastructure fee, whatever we decide on, as going towards payback of the cost to do our phase one changes. And Wasatch Civil has given us a kind of a minimum and a maximum cost. And so the minimum, which is further, there it is right here, $241,591. That includes $80,000 to Cottonwood Mutual for 4 water shares and hookups, and Wasatch Civil's minimum cost estimate. Yeah, next significant number on here is this one here, and that's their maximum cost. And whereas the smaller one leaves out the water line laterals, the contingency, and the base course for grading, that all comes back into this number here. So that number includes everything but the west side fire suppression estimate of $70,000. So $355,000 basically is the max cost that we think we'll see, except for the fire suppression on the west side. We felt that, well, I should say that I felt, to start with a payback schedule, you have to have some sort of an infrastructure fee that the hangar owners pay upfront, in addition to 2 years lease is what we have done in the past. And you establish that, and then you look at your taxes and lease fee on an annual basis to come up with how long it takes to pay back all of that money. So that's what this spreadsheet drives towards. I can say that for our hangars, the current 60 by 60s, we paid a little bit under $6,300 of infrastructure fees. On a inflation-adjusted basis, that's $7,600 in today's terms.
Okay, so for clarification, when you say infrastructure fees, is that for your sewer and your water? Is that what those infrastructure fees were for? Because they don't come to the county either.
I think it does come directly to the county, yes.
So
Yes.
I think they may pay a separate connection fee to the sewer district, but the fee he's talking about is to reimburse monies advanced in the past, some of which may be reimbursed to a particular individual who advanced those monies for purposes of getting some of those roads done, at least at some point. I think that was Shad Guffey did something like that, advanced monies to get the row completed, and then we would collect the fee that would be paid back to him as a pioneering agreement.
That's all been paid back though? No?
Don't know that one.
Okay.
It's
Well, I mean, it
probably
wouldn't be
pretty
part of the
close,
news
given
stuff.
the number of hangars on those rows. It probably should have been, but I don't know the answer to that either for sure. But
Okay.
So is, on your spreadsheet, this 3501, is that what the existing fee amount is, and you're proposing changing it to 9,000?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's 3501 because that's what it was from the infrastructure that was put in 2008.
Okay.
Which does not include water and sewer. So that's why it's a little bit lower, and it's also a smaller hangars.
Okay.
So that's what they pay now for the 50 by 40s. And there are 2 there. One was built a while ago. One is relatively new, and so they have paid their 3501. Pretty sure it is.
Okay.
So, for them to hook up to the infrastructure that we would provide, we would charge them the difference. So if we use 9,000 as the initial infrastructure payback fee, we would charge them the difference between 9,000 and 3501, and that would come to the county.
So we're talking about collecting 9,000 from each of these
Yes.
in total. Up front, 9,000 plus the 2-year lease, which is another 1,080.
Yes.
So they're 10,080 up front, and then the rest of your payback is calculated based on the lease fees and the taxes.
And the taxes. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Stacy, are you able to edit this Excel spreadsheet?
I did.
Do you have it up there?
Were you talking about the 325?
Yeah, to put the 325 in rather than the 2070. I'm just curious how that affects.
Change it, I don't know how this was changing the formulas, but the minimum payback time goes from what it's on up there to
So,
13.4 and 11.61.
so top left, Stacy, under where, instead of 27.
So we went from 5.4 and 4.6 to 11 and 13.
Yeah, on the minimum payback.
Yeah.
The max payback time is 22.49, 20.56.
Okay.
That's based off the 3 1/4. correct?
No, if we
Correct.
change it to the 3.
That's the only change I made. I don't know what else has happened in the formulas.
Okay.
And remember, I'm a philosophy major.
Yeah.
So 3, 6, 1, 13, 14, 4.
So now if we scroll down, Stacy, to those paybacks, let's see how that changes things. Of course, we still got the 2 that need to be updated, but anyway.
And then that puts you around 2249 and 2056.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a significant difference from where it was before.
Yeah,
So-
I liked the term of the payback before a little better,
Right.
but that doesn't, I mean. Okay.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the question, and correct me if I'm wrong, George, is, you know, the advisory board's looking for what direction they ought to pursue. I mean, are the numbers so hard that it's a non-starter? Is it something that the county would be looking to, you know, for alternative financing sources? There's some discussion of if there's state grants and so forth for airport expansion, those types of things. Is there anything that we would be willing to do as a county? If we had a funding source for it, we need to identify it first to get things moving. And then Member Cannon last time talked about, you know, is there some kind of bonding that we would want to do paid back from the revenues generated? And
Bobby, on that note, why wouldn't this go on the CIB list for that bonding, those low interest loans that are available through that list?
I'm not saying it couldn't. That's one of the possibilities. And if the county was doing a bond, we might want to package a few different things because cost of issuance is high enough that while this is a big amount, I'm not sure it's worth the cost of issuance, you know, for a bond on it if you don't combine it with other improvements. We could look into that specifically. I know I've received some input. What's that?
We've had other airport projects on there in the past.
I know some input I've received from members of the public relate to, you know, this is used by a really relatively small number of members of our community. And so should we be using public dollars towards advancing it, or should we try to find some arrangement like was done previously where somebody came in, said, I'll front the cost and I'll take the pioneering agreement and the pilots will pay me back over time, the ones who utilize it. That's another potential option. So I think that's...
Well, there's a reason why the private individual is willing to come forward to do the financing on it, because when you're looking at a situation like this where it's a government payment on a debt, you're almost guaranteed the return on the investment. But that's why the CIB funding is there at zero to low, very low interest cost, especially right now with the financing rates what they are. You can finance something like this for a lot lower through the government bonding process.
I agree.
That said, it also should be pointed out that even though it is a small group of individuals who pay the lease, here, that lease revenue for the county goes into the general fund budget that we use every year towards other items. So the airport has been a revenue generator Stacy would have to give the exact number, but it is a positive number every year towards the county budget.
I agree with both of those statements. I think the airport does contribute into the general fund. And I agree that if we do the bonding, that if we combine it, I think it's worthwhile. And I'm not saying we couldn't do an attractive bond issuance. I just think we would likely, given the cost of issuance, want to do more than $400,000 of bonding. I've never done a bond that small, but maybe it's done, and we could look at what the cost of issuances are, or we can see if there's other projects that we want to combine. And then there's the separate alternative of if we had, let's say we had a grant for $150,000 and the county had 50, and we had another $100,000 to come up with, you might have someone who would say, I'll advance it and do a pioneering agreement because I want a hangar that bad. You know, it's happened before. So I think there's a lot of different things to explore. They had the question about what's the county council's thoughts in terms of trying to move forward. Do we prefer one course over another? Member Cannon has suggested the bonding. Is that something that we ought to look into and explore more carefully? And then the other question that I think the advisory board had is, should we try to get a refinement of this estimate amount by soliciting a proposal from someone else and we're not going to bid yet. We're not saying yes, we want to bid, but do we need to follow the formal bidding process if we're just asking some local contractors to take a look and give us a number?
Yes, it could come in significantly lower. I have no idea. So Joe has a couple of names in mind. I don't know, I would start with them, but if we need the approval to do that, I think.
So I didn't know the answer to that, Jan. Would we need to do that, solicit a bid just to try to get a better estimate?
So we're not spending any money, so those estimates wouldn't be hard estimates that we would offer the job to them if we liked their estimate?
Right, no, we wouldn't, because I don't think we're ready to offer the job until we identify the funding source, but we might be able to get some refinement in the number.
I think you have a financial advice, don't we have a financial advisor, Zions Bank, or Lewis Shannon Robertson, or one of those we're on contract right now to ask those kinds of questions and do that kind of research. So it may be as simple as asking them to
ask the contractor to get some better numbers.
I mean, we literally, one of those two organizations or both are basically on retainer with the county right now to answer that question.
Okay.
For you, if you want to do it less formally than that, yeah, I think any council member could just go to some local builders and get some estimates, and knowing that you would still have to open it up for a bid.
Yeah, and I don't think we're ready to do that at all, but
Legwork, any council member could just do that.
Okay.
Get some local bids, do that.
All right, any direction for the advisory board with respect to, should we look at exploring?
Make a comment based on what you were saying earlier. The conversations that I have with the public about the airport are essentially the same as what you've had. It does serve a small amount of people. It's been easy to defend because it has been revenue positive for the county, to a good sum. It's been good for the county. There are quite a few people out there that do not enjoy the planes flying over on Saturday mornings. In my area, they've kind of cooled down recently, but over the last few years, I have had some very long and heated discussions over how come the county isn't regulating where they can fly, and just trying to explain that we don't regulate FAA airspace. It's not ours. And anyway, so not everybody loves the airport. So I think whatever we do, we need to make sure we maintain our revenue positive, and we make sure it's smart for everybody in the county and not taxing some individuals for the enjoyment of others when it's not benefiting everybody. We just need to be careful with that.
So question, George. So on the 80,000 to Cottonwood Mutual hookups,
Yes.
and the 2,000 deposit. So I guess my question is that 80,000, is that the water shares and the storage that we're going to be required
They said
to provide?
this is for 4 water shares, 18,000 per water share, 2,000 per hookup, and an additional 2,000 for, what is it, the first year's use? I think that's what it was.
Oh, sounds like the water you'd be getting is on a Weber Basin water lease,
Yes.
and they require new applicants to pay the first 2 years of the water lease payments.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So where does that fall in? Does that include the storage?
I think
so.
I think
I think
that
so.
includes the
Yeah.
storage.
I guess the
At that
$18,000
number, I would
hookup.
guess that's true.
Okay, well, I just don't want to get clipped along here and have the water company say you got to have an additional 50, 60 grand to use our storage.
We've had them involved for several months now. In fact, we first contacted them almost a year ago. So they're aware, and that their water board met at least a month ago, probably 2 months ago. And they were able to come up with everything that you're asking me about, the storage capacity and the 4 water shares for 20,000 per water share. So my understanding is it's all included. I'm not the guy to ask more specific questions than that.
So who's the 4 water shares? Because we have water to AA, B, B, and CC. So you got D, D, E, E, and FF. Where's the 4th share?
It's for the,
So if you remember right, Roland, it's where we gave Doug Urbano water, but we didn't, there was no way to give Doug Urbano water. So I don't know, based on the numbers, because I can't see it, but that was a problem that we created.
I thought one of those water shares was for the
Commercial.
berm strip along the road, to better irrigate that so the trees can grow, and there's a barrier between the homes on the other side of the road and the hangars that are blocking their view and right there. So it's for irrigation, I thought for the 4th water share. As far as Doug Urbano's hangar goes, I don't know anything about that.
Well, that was where we had I can't remember the term now, but Mike and Roland will remember the term that we had.
Yeah, an exceptional
Or-
condition,
Conditional exception.
exceptional variance.
So, but in any event, Cottonwood Mutual Water Company is saying 4 shares, and that number sounds like an all-in number for acquiring the water right, the well capacity, and the storage capacity, just based on my past experience with that water company. And the connections, and so the meter sets, it sounds like. Okay?
Mr. Chair, I'll make my comments and then whoever else. I agree with what Member Kilmer has said. I am in favor of doing some type of creative solution to allow the airport to continue to expand. I think that's a good thing. It looks like there will need to be some type of creative solution, and that's great. I think there's plenty of smart people that can figure that out, so.
Anyone else? So,
Well, I ain't got a problem with the airport. I mean, the thing is, everything that goes on in the county is particular to one group or another. You know, so we can't look at it as if it's not gonna benefit the whole county. I don't have a problem on the airport. I see the revenue, I can see the interest in it. My question is the size of what we're trying to tackle at the moment, I think is a little, personally, I think is a little bit out of our scope, but.
This number here.
So, well, yeah, just the whole project. I mean, and now that we've changed, you know, we've changed those numbers, and now we've gone from, 4.5 years to 13 and 10, and
so
I think we need to look at, personally, I think we need to look at something a little smaller scale, maybe 1 row or, I don't know.
that's an option. I think what we do, though, so there's a couple of balls in the air right now. One is trying to get some better numbers, and if you're okay with us doing that, then I'll try to pursue that with the contractors that Joe, and just see if we can get some refinement of the number. Two, there's the size of the expansion, the EE and FF, and whether we could break that into two or not. And then there's the potential commercial project as well, which if that came in and contributed something towards the infrastructure improvement costs, that could also be another player in bringing the cost that the county would be fronting down. So I think we start with trying to get some refinement on the numbers. I know there's been some effort by the board to see what else is available in terms of funding from the state. If we could get that, you know, a number at least that we think is accurate, and then come back and then keep it in mind in terms of the CIB list. If there's other projects that we want to combine it with, and I'll find out. I can probably call our bond counsel and find out what he thinks the cost of issuance would be on a $300,000 bond. I mean, it's the lawyers and the financial advisors, and it's generally expensive. But Tina's absolutely right. The rates right now are pretty awesome. So I mean, it would be a good time to secure a bond if we wanted to go that route. Does that provide you with the direction you wanted? Do you have any further questions?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
So, the thought had occurred to me that if you would allow me to get with the county assessor, I could refine these numbers. But if you think they're refined enough, and there's no reason to go any further with it, then your answer to that is probably going to be no, we don't need to do that. But if you want me to, I would be happy to look at the numbers on the existing hangars, what the airport produces, just perhaps fine tune these numbers a little bit better and bring them down. If possible.
That's all public information. I think you're more than welcome to do that, and I would welcome that. I mean, yeah, you can go to the assessor anytime and ask for that information.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
You can get it online,
Yeah, I pulled
actually.
them online. You can pull people's tax notices online if you go into the separate parcels.
Or even the
It
name.
might be a little harder to do with these hangar pads because that's the county's property, so you might need to speak to the assessor, and she might make you fill out a grandma request,
Okay.
but it's public information.
But yes, that answers my question, and it gives us some direction.
Okay.
So who are you?
This is Julie Chapman.
So, my name is Julie Chapman. I'm the secretary of the Morgan County Airport Advisory Board. And anyway, I've been working on some alternate sources of funding for the airport, and I've talked to Utah Aeronautics about getting state funding. They do have the Airport Capital Improvement Plan, and I just need to submit a bid for that. And then also, I've been working to get Morgan County Airport under consideration for what's called, I don't remember the acronym exactly, but it's essentially federal funding for the airport. One of the issues that we're going to be facing is our pre-existing infrastructure on the airport and the width of our runway. We have some things that would concern the FAA review board about that. But there is a stipulation that if you have compelling enough circumstances, you can get that waived. And what I've been really heavily hanging our hat on is the economic impact of the Forest Service and the Wasatch Helitack folks there. And I was wondering if you guys had any access to what the economic impact of the Forest Service is, any sort of numbers or metrics or something like that that I can use to put into the application package to justify, hey, we are an important site for this, we serve as the Forest Service base, etc. Do you have anything like that, or do you know where I could go to find something like that?
Well, there's the lease revenue. There is a current lease, but that's really the only information we have. There's no kind of economic analysis that I'm aware of in terms of the fact that they're located and operating from
We
here.
don't know how many corn dogs they buy over at Old Farm.
Right, right. That's important.
It is.
That'd be kind of corny if we didn't know that.
We just haven't been tracking it.
But I was also, I know I have a basic idea of, how many folks support it, what sort of training operations they do and such, but this is, it's the major part of how I think we can get the exemption for, I liked the term, was it legal nonconformance or pre-existing nonconformance, something like that, because a lot of our infrastructure, that west side hangar and that runway were built a long time before they had the federal funding apparatus, which was developed in 2011. So anyway, if you guys stumble upon something, please let me know on that. I'll just continue going forward with applying for that, seeing if that can be our funding source. Neither of those, I think, are going to be immediate enough. Either the Utah State funding from Department of Aeronautics, which we already are eligible for, we just have to put in a request saying, hey, here's what we want, here's why we want it, and here's what good it's going to do for the community. The federal, that is probably going to take about a year or two before anything would kick in on that, and we would be fighting for a shared pot among all the other airports that are on it's called the NPIAS list. So anyway.
Okay.
One-
Well, thanks. The other
one
thing we ought to
thought
look
that
at
comes
is
to
frankly
mind-
improving the fence, but.
A thought that comes to mind, we've had this happen in the past, when you talk about like an economic analysis, there are grad students that do that as part of a graduate program. You might reach out to one of the universities and see if there's somebody that's interested in coming and trying to do an economic analysis.
It's a really good idea. Would it, like Utah State, Weber State?
We had, there was an individual that did one on the Lost Creek area, through Utah State, I think it was. So, I mean.
It was through Weber State.
Oh, it was Weber? You're right, it was Weber. So, I mean,
So either
that's
of
a,
those
that's
two
a
would be-
thought, you know.
Have you asked Boyd Kerrigan about the Forest Service portion?
His name's Boyd Kerrigan.
Yeah, he's the fire chief.
Yeah, the fire.
I have not yet. No, but I can definitely engage him and see what he's got to say about that. I've talked to a couple of the more historical figures in our community who are associated with the Forest Service on that, but I hadn't reached out to Boyd yet.
Boyd might, with his history with wildland fire, I think he might have some good connections for you on that.
Okay.
Also, Wasatch Front Regional Council also has an aeronautics portion of their funding through UDOT that we work on. So if you send me an email, and I'll get you in touch with the right person there.
Will do, yeah. I'll send you an email after this, and we'll go from there. If you can give me the emails for Boyd and all those other folks, really appreciate your help on this. I just want to get separate sources of funding so, we have a lot of different things going for us and continuing to develop the airport.
Okay, great. Thanks to both of you.
Thanks, John.
All three of you. Joe. Okay. All right, that moves us to Airport Advisory Board discussion decision, approval of hangar pad FF2 for Heidi and Lynn Alley, approval of hangar pads EE1 for David Wolf and FF1 for Josh Bond. But we don't have leases again yet,
I
right?
suggest don't do any more leases until you get this figured out.
Well, that was gonna be my question, is how are we gonna be doing leases if we don't know what we're doing here?
Our leasees do not want to sign a lease until they know what their infrastructure is going to cost.
Okay.
That's fair.
A few of them are willing to pay $15,000 to start that process. I have those letters from them.
Well, and again,
That's the other creative part.
yeah, that, again, those,
So
some of the
people
folks
that
are,
pioneering,
right.
get a few of the hangars in without the infrastructure, water and sewer, and put that in later. That might be an option too, to get their money up front, then we can use it to put it in later.
Okay.
So,
All right.
creative ideas, there you go.
Awesome.
So
So are we postponing that item or just removing it?
let's just remove it from the agenda.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move that we remove item number 6 from the agenda.
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Member Kilmer and Member Haslam. Continued discussion for September 1st with respect to the capital improvement list.
Okay, this is just our list we go over every year, identify the county projects and any changes we want to make. This would be the time if you want to add an airport project on there, to add that on there with a priority. Anything that you can see on here that maybe we've completed and we don't need on there anymore, it's time to clean this list up and just go down through it.
We starting on the short term or the long term?
It doesn't make any difference, wherever you want to start. Which one you got in front of you?
I got short term.
Short term it is.
And is our new term 2021
Yeah.
through 24? We do 3 years?
Let's see. For short term?
Yeah. Looks like it was 3 years last time.
Yeah. 2 to 3 years is what we usually do.
So I've got one page, is that correct?
See, told you.
You'll want to look at these hard copies that Stacy.
You heard me telling that it was on there before.
So what year are we going through?
Yeah,
21 through 23 or 24?
let's do 2 years.
23?
In the past, looks like we've done them a couple of years at a time on a short-term list.
See, the other's 2023 through, and the other's like a 5-year, so maybe through
Yeah, the other one's a
2028.
5-year, yeah. And Stacy just handed me the old one that was in our last packet. Airport expansion was on there. It had been removed, but it's easy enough to put that right back on if that's what you want to do.
I think we ought to put it on our short-term
It-
list.
It was a specific project I think we were working on with the runway and stuff, and I think we finished that project. It was just a small amount of money, and I think we did what we needed to do. It needed to be on there for some state money we were after, and
Which
so
one was that?
It's the airport expansion. I think it's when we redid the runways or something like that. They were applying for that grant from the state, so we put it on there,
On
did
that
it,
old one, yeah.
got it redone, took it off.
So
This
their
would
worst
be a-
case scenario was about 355,000, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So should we put that amount, 355?
Did you say you're working on the short term first?
Yes, short term.
And did you change the date?
2021 through
Where have you
2023.
been, girl?
Finding his paperwork.
To 2023, is that what you said?
Correct, yeah.
And on this one from 16, 17, you have it as high? Is it still gonna be listed as high?
Yeah, priority, how do you want?
I would say
Sounds
it's
like
high
you're kinda
priority.
going High
I'd
priority.
say high as well.
And then the area priority COG will set based on the other projects that come in from the city and that kind of stuff.
Oh, okay. We just set the applicant
We set
priority.
the applicant priority, and then
Gotcha.
COG will set the area priority.
So can we remove hotel?
That's the cities.
Oh, I see.
What's the continuation of the walking trail in Mountain Green?
I think it was going up Cottonwood, making that connection, that we've had that struggle with those landowners.
So is that one we want to remove for the time being? It doesn't look like it had an estimated cost or
We had
anything.
nothing on there other than just, it was on there.
I mean, it definitely shouldn't be high priority if we don't have anything else identified, right?
Okay, scratch that one.
I think so, but,
Okay.
Which one was that?
but you're from that area, you tell us.
Walking
Continuation
trail.
of the walking trail.
Well, so is this the continuation up Cottonwood alongside the airport runway and adjacent to Browning?
It's to connect the Rose Hill to the walking path for the,
It's for the
Yeah.
Cottonwoods.
to the Cottonwoods.
Yeah, mean, it'd be a great thing to do. A lot of people walk and ride that
Right.
road all the time, but if we don't expand it into the airport side of the road, then we need the permission of Browning. I think there was a proposal, what was it, 6 months ago? Where there was a proposal to build that in as part of the road right-of-way and expand that road right-of-way from a developer through there, so that it would include not a separate trail, but a separate like bike and walking lane. So, I mean, if that road gets improved, then I would think we'd want to include it, so we at least have the bike lane. People could walk in it and stay out of the traffic. So instead of a walking trail, it might be the expansion of Cottonwood Creek
Is
Road.
it something we want on here in an effort to try and secure some kind of funding from the CIB or?
But, okay, so I need to slide back so you don't punch me. Okay, so part of the problem we got is we don't have a recorded development agreement with
For Northside.
Northside Creek. The original development agreement talked about the expansion and the walking trail. Okay? So, do you push that hand and say, okay, part of the original development agreement of Northside Creek, you're supposed to do this? Or do we pull back and say, okay, no, now the county's gonna take that deal? Because we still today don't have a development agreement with them.
Which would make it hard to enforce. It's not just recorded, I haven't seen an executed one.
I know, that's what I'm saying. So there's nothing recorded. There's 3 different, development agreements that's been wrote up, and none of them have been recorded. But the original one talked about was supposed to expand Cottonwood Canyon Road from the storage units all the way up to the turnaround that the county ended up tearing out.
That's right, and they did propose a trail. The problem is the trail's on Browning property.
It was on Browning property.
Hasn't wanted to put the trail on their property.
Well, at the time they were, because that's where all their people walk. But now, in time, everything's changed and they don't want it there now.
Right.
So how do we address that?
The last proposal was to expand the road and include the lane, although there's a limited amount of width through there to accomplish it. So, I don't know, I won't express a preference one way or the other way there, you know?
Without knowing how much it costs, or, I mean, I don't know that it's even pointless, right?
It's like a moot point.
It's, every year this is revisited and can be put on
You
at
can
any
talk
given
louder,
time
yeah,
if you
yeah.
get far enough along with the project where you have.
It's a mute point.
We're ready to try to,
But for sure, it's definitely not top high priority. Getting that connection for those middle school walking students was a big deal, and it's all a landowner issue there and cleaning all that mess up. And that's not a CIB issue.
Well,
That's
I would say if you're gonna leave it on, it goes to low, because they are trucking out of there daily. So that's not something we wanna be looking at trying to do until all that development is completed.
I think we just remove it for the time being and we can always re-add it.
Scratch that one.
I agree.
Improvements to the fairgrounds, we have not secured the funding for those things yet, but that's still high priority.
Is that still an accurate number, do you think? Because
It's probably half what it needs to be.
yeah, just an exhibit building's gonna be more than that.
So we want to increase that number.
I think we do.
What do you want to go to?
Well, if you think that's half what we need, we probably ought to put 500,000 on there.
Next one was a new fire station.
That's replacing this one over here.
I think that was replacement, not an additional, right?
That was replacement.
Yeah. And I don't know if that number is still accurate or not, or if it should be more than that, or
Considering the way building materials went this summer,
Oh, yeah.
it's probably nowhere near right now, but
But-
it's about half now too.
Okay, but the thing is, with the direction the Boyd's going with that fire station, do we even still need to be looking at a new one?
I mean, someday we do. Whether that should be on our short-term or long-term, I don't know. Probably should be
I
on
would,
our long-term.
I would say
instead
long,
of
if we're gonna do a
short-term.
long-term, do a long-term, but.
Yeah.
Do we have it on the long-term?
No.
Well, then let's put it on the long-term. And I would suggest we change the dollar amount to at least 3 million for the time being.
And did you say you do or do not determine the priority?
We determine the applicant priority, not the area priority.
And what do you want to determine as priority?
I think that was low, wasn't it?
On here it's
I'd
high.
probably,
High.
it was high on here. I would either leave it as high on the long-term or maybe medium.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, no, that's low. Maybe we need a new one.
I'd leave it high and put it on the long-term, but that's my thought.
Okay.
I didn't hear anybody arguing against it, so.
All right, I've moved it to long-term, high, county, fire station, 3 million.
Yes.
Perfect.
Got it.
Do we need to put FEMA on that, or TBD, or funding source? I don't know that we have.
Unknown.
We ever had a FEMA funding source, I
I
think.
don't know that we did either. Okay. Well, if we don't know a funding source, we'll leave it alone for now.
And then can't see Weaver River Bridge, that one's going in.
That one's already in process, right?
Milton Park improvements, we actually.
So do we remove the Weber River one?
I was gonna say, I just took Doc there and I thought how nice it was.
Yeah, we did them all over the last 2 years.
It's really nice.
So I think we can scratch the Milton Park improvements.
And are we scratching the Weber River Bridge since that's underway?
That's city county, since it's
Okay,
not
we'll just leave it alone.
complete, we'll leave that on there.
Wait, we're getting a bridge?
I don't know if they're gonna apply for additional funds.
Hmm?
I didn't know we were
The
getting a
Croydon
bridge.
Park improvements have not been done.
Yeah.
And those are, the funding sources on those we've been looking at are CDBG.
Did you say
Would-
scratch Milton?
Scratch Milton,
We've already done it.
but not Croydon.
Okay. And put CDBG in the funding source?
Yeah, CIB and CDBG.
Okay. Got it?
Sewer improvements, fairgrounds, saying, I think leave them where they're at. I mean, I'd love to see it move to high, but outside of that, I wouldn't change anything on there.
So what are you talking about, sewer improvement?
Extending the city sewer up to include the fairgrounds so that we're not running on septic tanks.
Oh. We'll make that decision before we put the one in for the bathrooms.
Yeah, that's
This
true.
ain't- This
You're
ain't gonna
right.
happen before we need that one. Better
And
just
it's gonna
start
cost a
digging.
little more than that septic system, huh?
And then
So is there other stuff that we need to put on this short-term list that we don't have?
That's the question for you guys. Have you got anything that people have brought to you, any things that you've come up with through your different committees that
I kinda want a new house.
council members' homes?
Sarah, the property up East Canyon sounds like it's gonna be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only thing we've added is the airport expansion.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, your long-term, you're going to 28?
All right,
Is that what
we're
you
on
said?
the long-term, Stacy,
Okay.
and,
2023 to 2028.
So is this the same thing where it says improvements to fairgrounds, it's on both short and long-term?
Should we take it off long term?
So do we need to change that to 500,000?
I'm trying to remember if that needs to be on, is there a reason why those are on both, Roland? Do you remember?
There's one
Well,
that's there.
so one part of it was, the exhibit building and the immediate buildings there. And I thought the other part of it was doing the other side of, like the RV parking
Oh, all right.
And
Kind of just.
over
let
on that area, the parking and
parking
stuff over
lots
there.
and the lighting
And that would have been, part of like the pickleball court and stuff like that.
Right.
So this is other improvements, so it should probably stay.
Yeah.
Because that was a purpose for putting the tennis and pickleball courts over in that area and the bathrooms for future
Was to give
expansion.
parking expansion.
Yes.
And the next one's the acquisition of land for park in Mountain Green. There was a movement there to try and work a deal with the LDS Church and the land that they own down around their Bowery. That has
It's
come
not
up
gonna
and
happen.
gone down a dozen times.
I personally, at this point, feel like any other parks probably ought to be part of developments and not necessarily the county,
Just outright purchasing land and building parks.
but I don't know.
And really the question, it's not so much a question of, is that a priority for our county, but is it a priority for this type of funding source? And some different types of funding sources kind of required to be on here if it might still be a priority for the county, but not necessarily something that we were going to pursue with this type of a project.
So is it taking it off? Is that what you were
I mean, I'm okay with it being on, but maybe bump the priority down from high, but that's just me. I don't know what you guys think.
Isn't there a park in Mount Auburn?
Yes.
There's a,
For soccer
Two
fields.
county parks and some various smaller private parks in the HOAs.
And pickleball courts that get ratted on for spending,
And
having too many people there.
almost weekly requests for doubling, tripling the size of the pickleball courts.
You guys would
really,
congregate.
they
They
seem
would
busy.
Yeah.
They would just as soon we take out the soccer field and fill it all with pickleball courts.
I'm sure.
That property that you're talking about specifically the one, the rec board wanted it for soccer?
Yeah.
For soccer.
Yeah, it was like a regional sized park that
Yeah.
when I
Thi-
heard.
This
It was
one
a
that's
lot
on
bigger
here
park
was to
than what
put
we
in
have now.
Another complex like we have here,
Oh, like
but
what we
more
have.
for soccer than.
Oh.
Well, I mean, that's what they use
Okay.
softball fields for anyways, is soccer.
Yeah.
Just
But
combine
you
it all.
should- They do.
Yeah, and baseball
It is.
field. It's an abomination, but.
Yeah. And football, they throw football on there too.
So, do we leave it on there then? I mean,
I don't
we
have a
probably
problem.
should leave it on there.
I don't
for
have a
that.
problem with it on there, doesn't
Okay,
make any
just leave it.
If it becomes
Just
a
the
possibility, I'm
list,
not
let's
sure that the church will sell the
Right.
property.
Right. And then the new county office building.
Is that a reasonable dollar amount? I guess it doesn't matter.
Today's world? I don't think so, but I think that number's been the same since I've been on the council.
We'll just leave it alone then.
And I don't know that it's even a high priority. I mean, we've been putting a lot of money into this building and we're finding new ways to do business. We're not necessarily expanding. We're doing more online business and more stuff like that. We're not bulging like we were and looking to continue to grow with being able to do everything like we are. Corona has changed the world.
So are we moving that to low instead of high?
I don't know that it needs to be a high priority. Does anybody else?
Which one?
The
County office
building.
building.
No.
Lonnie?
Depends on who you talk to.
We're talking to us.
Just gonna say,
Right here.
Yeah, right here.
I don't like the idea of low just because it sounds. So I'm a medium guy on this one, but
So
Sounds
maybe
good.
but that's
Make it medium, that's fine.
Medium it is.
works.
You should have the plans for it, and it was only 6 million 10 years ago.
Yeah.
10 years. Now it's
So it's-
Have the daggum
so it's
thing
So
16.
one
paid
supplier
for.
told me his
Yeah.
materials went up
Yeah.
80% this summer alone, so 6 million's not even gonna come close. And the plans probably don't even meet building code anymore, so.
Do we already have sewer improvements?
Yeah, it's on the short term.
I'd like to
Can we
get
take it off?
commercial tax base built up before.
I can't remember why they're on both. Do you, Roland?
What's that?
Commercial
Why we
street
have
building and
sewer
improvements.
improvements on both long and short term, different priorities.
Sewer improvements.
You're talking to the fairgrounds again?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, let's just scratch it because it's on the short term unless we get to COG and Ty tells us there's a reason it needs to be on there, we'll add it back on.
Okay.
Scratch sewer improvements on the long term.
On the long term, not on the short term.
Yeah.
And then affordable housing development, again, another one that's, if we're gonna leave it on there, I think it's right where it needs to be.
Do we know why we
So-
had that on there?
There's another, there's been, over the years, there's different projects we're working on where we have to identify things like this in order to qualify for other things, and so we put things
Okay.
like that on here. It's not necessarily that we have a spot picked out and we're trying to do it. Robert's aware we've proposed multiple times for it to be parts of different developments that have been proposed. But then it always comes back, and it's the debate that we've had clear at the state level and that the legislature has had, is who defines affordable? What is affordable, and what's affordable in Morgan compared to what's affordable at 25th Street in Ogden? So there's so many debates over the whole thing that.
And I frankly think on affordable housing, we could, if we do the zoning that will allow it to come in, a developer would come and put it in. I don't know how much funding we need to provide. I mean, there might be an increment type of deal or a tax credit deal, which doesn't involve the county, but you first have to authorize a place for it to be located that will work for affordable housing.
Okay, and therein lies your debate. Who are you gonna stick it with? You gonna put it in the Mountain Green Town Center? Or are you gonna put it in downtown Croydon?
Yeah.
And
Where
again-
is downtown Croydon?
I didn't know there was a downtown Croydon.
Right, kind of close to the Mountain Green Town Center too. It's on paper only so far.
It's a myth.
So,
Okay.
there's just
All
so
right.
many debates on it, but, and I don't have a problem with it leaving just right where it's at.
Which one?
So the highway striping for $100,000?
I'm off, I'm done with Tyler's
That-
dropping.
I know you
You
didn't
know
like
what?
the last striping, and frankly,
What is?
that striping hasn't lasted very
Striping.
long that we've
That's
seen.
why we
Yellow
didn't ever
lines
want
down
to
the
do
Doesn't
it.
last long.
Oh,
He told
We are
members
not
at
allowed to
Hudson High
use the
School, and he
paint
knows what side
that
of
the
the line to
state
drive on.
gets
He
to
doesn't
use
need a
on the
line
freeways.
road.
That lasts.
That lasts.
I look at it like this, if you can't
Oh,
see the
really?
road, you need to
We're not
either slow
allowed
down or not be driving.
well, and
So
the way
when
they
we
changed the
striped it
paint, you
years
can't see
ago,
it when
and it
it's wet
lasted
anyway,
through-
so it just
almost
doesn't
through
matter.
the first winter, they striped it in like September. We decided we're not going to pay for striping anymore because it's an expense that you have to continually be paying every single year and redoing because they won't let us use that. Then I lost the battle last year to that old highway from Old Farm back up that road a little ways because they wanted to stripe it. It won't last. It's something you have to do. So if you're gonna
Fades
do
pretty
all the roads
quickly.
in the county, don't plan on fixing any more roads because all your costs are gonna go to restriping them every year.
Sounds like we should remove that because you're quite passionate about it, so let's just remove
I'm fine with you scratching it right
I'd
off
say
of
take
there.
it off.
And the paint.
I
you can't
agree,
see
let's
at
take it
night.
off.
Take it off.
Highway striping
It
is
didn't
off.
last
gone.
very
It's
long.
off.
Perfect. Pointless.
I mean, it's still
Mute
there, you
points.
can still see it, but it's like, wow, that paint faded quick.
Fast.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how they have that. The purpose, I don't know, other than we were told we're not allowed to use that good paint.
Leave
It
it to the
harms the
feds, huh?
environment.
It's the what?
Federal regulations.
Yeah, it's federal.
Yeah,
Situations.
that's why you
Okay.
can drive at night in the rain and wreck because you can't see the paint on the
Right.
road.
I will say when I
driving
ride
You
too
have all
fast.
those changes, Stacy? Will you
That's
send
true.
those to?
See that especially on motorcycles.
Sure.
Okay, she's the one that gave me
Yeah,
this.
she's been keeping the master copy. Send them to
Leave that
Denise,
pin here
ask her
so
to
that when I
forward
come in
them
next week.
to
So then
Jana
in 2
Brown
weeks,
for
but
call on
No,
Monday,
you'll be here next Tuesday.
because it's on the
Tuesday.
agenda.
I'm not clicking my.
Okay.
Since I'm not gonna
Pen
be
into the
anywhere
microphone.
around, I don't want to be
Even
responsible
from
for getting them to her.
You can still
Thank
hear
you.
me.
Okay,
He's texting.
so our
me.
last item on the agenda is request for determination of COVID-19 green status.
I'm in favor of it.
Mandy, did you stick around this whole time to talk about this? Okay, all right. Because you should have told me, I would have moved it up.
I make a motion, we go to green.
So,
Did anyone talk to Brian Benyon about this? I was
Yes.
gonna call him today.
I spoke to him about it today, and so there's not a definitive state criteria for moving to green. But it would involve the county making a formal request to go to green, which would be reviewed by the health department, particularly Brian. And they do have some criteria in mind and that they're looking to publish relatively soon. They would want to see a declining case rate percentage, which I think we were up around 9 or 10 and now down around 5, so it is declining. They'd want to see it declining for a few weeks. And I don't know that we've met the few week threshold yet. So what I would suggest is that it sounds like they might have some criteria out within the next 3 weeks, and so maybe we bump this to the next agenda item, see if the criteria are out, and if we fit it, then we make a formal motion to move to green, and then we'll put together whatever letter we need to send it out.
I'd rather make the recommendation and force them to push forward.
I'd rather just try to. look
Yeah,
at
I mean,
other counties
one of the
and other
concerns I
counties.
have when you talk about case numbers and declining, you know, if you take our population and then extrapolate it out to 100, you know, cases per 100,000, which is what the state typically looks at, right? It looks like our case rates might be higher than some places. But the truth is, in our county, all it takes is one family of 5 or 6 people to get it, and your case numbers go way off the charts, even though all you're really talking about is one isolated case, really. I mean, it might be 5 people, but it's one case for one family. So it concerns me, and I hope that the Weber Morgan Health Department will look at it that way, because it concerns me if they're trying to establish criteria and compare it to Weber County or even other counties within the state. I think they need to be looking at it from a very different point of view, in that we have a population of 12,000 people. You know, 5 people, yeah, that's a lot when you're comparing it to 12,000 people, but it's also one family. And that's very different than, you know, so that's my concern is, number one, I think the health department has taken some liberties here in some things, and that's okay to some degree, but we are the governing board for this county. And I think if we decide that that's what we want to do, I would hope that the health department is understanding of that and looks at it.
Yeah, I didn't have any, Brian wasn't pushing back. He was just saying, not a state criteria, we'll look at it, we'll work through it. He said, the one thing that makes us different than like Daggett County is that there's a large portion of our population that gets up in the morning and goes down into Salt Lake County, Davis County, and Weber County, where they do still have higher case counts and so forth. Now, you know, at my firm, they're pretty careful about it, you know, in terms of what we do when we meet together, if we meet together at all. There's still a ton of people that just will call in, you know. But I don't know that that's true everywhere that people are working. And so he says, we are a little different that way. We don't have a large employment base within the county. So people that are working here aren't all working here. There's a large number that head out and go there every day. But again, he's like, that doesn't mean you can't go to green. I'm happy to look at it. So you're saying you want to move it now?
Yeah, I'm ready to make the.
I see that most people do have to drive out of the county to go to work, but when you do drive out of the county, you're required to wear a mask everywhere you go, so
You're following
if
those
they work,
guidelines when you follow
you're still
them.
following their guidelines.
Well, I think that the fact that this has been going on for, what, 6 months, and we have a total of 86 cases that we've had in our entire county, tells me that even if we are traveling out of the county, we're obviously not contracting the illness at a great rate.
And bringing it back.
And bringing it back into Morgan County. If we were, our case numbers should be much higher than 86 over a 6-month period.
And
That's
he's
what,
been to
that's what I'm
California
looking
during
at.
this thing.
Huh?
And he's been to
I've been to
California
California
during
during this thing. Yeah, we're at 86. 86 is our total numbers.
They're still looking for the arsons.
Okay, so did you in fact, was that intended to be a motion? Because he seconded it, so I'm not, if it was in fact a motion, then we'll move that direction. It may not get processed any faster, but I'm happy to put together the letter.
I'd rather do that than wait the 3 weeks to see what their criteria
yeah.
is. Because
If
they'll
I had-
either say yes or no.
Because the governor's the one who actually,
Yeah.
he gets to make the ultimate decision.
Mhm.
Weber County has been a great partner that they need to factor in. You know, we're on the other side of the mountain and we have needs, and our local businesses would love to go green and stop with some of the restrictions. And so I think we have to look out for
Our
this side of
county.
the hill, and Weber Morgan's is gonna have to put a little emphasis on the Morgan part of the hyphenated word and give us a little love. But it's the governor that makes the decision, and
Right.
the other county attorneys I've spoke to, whose counties have gone green, said you just have to be a squeaky wheel. We just gotta, they told us who to CC the letter to make sure it doesn't fall through the cracks, so they can't come back and say they didn't get the letter. And Robert and I have had some emails back and forth. I've done some research on that, so I think I know who. We have a couple draft letters that have been successful in going to green. I could help with that.
And I think there's some things we can point out. I mean, other than the fact that we've only had 86 cases in this entire time, we also have had 0 deaths. We've had no outbreaks in our aged facility, you know, in our old, what do I want to call that? Not
You
old
can
folks'
say it.
homes, but our
We all know what you're talking about.
you know what I'm talking about, our senior housing, right? Senior living facilities, assisted living, thank you. We've had no major outbreaks in the schools thus far, and schools have been in for a few weeks. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we've done pretty well. I understand this is still a serious matter, and I'm sure from the health department you're saying these guys are crazy. But I just think there's definitely a case to be made here that, you know, whatever we're doing, we're obviously doing it right, because if we weren't, our case numbers would be significantly higher and there would be deaths and all kinds of other things within our county.
Then yes, that's my motion, is to pursue this with the health department.
Yes,
Second.
yes.
Okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Jen, if you will help me put together the letter.
I'll do the draft tomorrow.
Okay. And I will get it sent off, and you can talk to Brian, and
Tell him it's on his way.
Are we meeting on, oh no, 2 weeks, huh? Are we actually meeting, or are we still calling in?
We're every other month, so we just had one in August.
so I'm gonna sign the letter, but
Oh.
Roland's gonna hand carry it in.
I'll send the full council
Okay,
draft letter
I got it,
tomorrow
come
morning.
on.
I'll hand
I'll
carry
send
it
you,
in.
all of you a draft letter to weigh in on tomorrow by 10.
Great.
Perfect.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Quick question for all of you.
No,
Are
you're
you
supposed to do
okay
that
getting this
before.
electronically?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nobody wants a physical copy immediately? Okay.
Being an administrative meeting, is this one that's advertised, is this a meeting, is this an administrative meeting?
If we have,
So-
Doesn't need to be advertised, no.
I don't think the administrative meeting needs to be advertised next Tuesday, but it will be open.
Clerk?
I don't get me any copies, since I won't be here, there's no reason to make copies.
Okay, I'll just email it to everybody.
I don't think we need to record administrative meetings. I was looking at,
It will be on another agenda for when we really award the funds. and-
Yes.
so I was looking at a closed meeting requirement. Are we recording our closed meetings?
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
The option, if you're only talking about the character of an individual, and that's the only thing you're talking about, you cannot record them. then the chair signs